to the Special Council budget meeting for 2022-23, held today on the 8th of July. I'd like to now open the meeting with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And Lord, on this day, I pray that as a council, you grant us the humility to debate in a respectful manner with each other, and also the wisdom to make decisions in the best interest of our community. In Lord Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, I don't believe we have any requests for leave of absence today, or any apologies, so I'll now invite Councillor... Sorry, no, I've done that. Councillor Duff, are we doing a recognition of traditional owners? Yeah, if we could do. Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge country in the land where we meet this morning, the Waka Waka land, and acknowledge the elders both past, present and emerging. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, in terms of today's agenda, do you have any conflicts of interest that you wish to disclose to the meeting? If not, feel free to do so as we move through the agenda. Thank you. First item on the agenda is item 6.1, minutes of the Budget Committee meeting held last year on the 17th, a Budget Committee meeting, held recently on the 17th of June 2022. That is at page 6 of the agenda, whereby it is recommended that the minutes of the Budget Committee meeting held on 17 June 2022 be received. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconded Councillor Potter. Any speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Council, we will now move to 7.2. We just had a bit of an error there in the order, so as customary, we'd always deliver the Mayor's budget address first. So it is now my pleasure to do so. Okay, well, good morning everyone, and the people of the South Burnett today. We, as your representatives, table the proposed South Burnett Regional Council budget for 2022-23. To the people of our region, this is your money, this is your budget. This is your council's commitment to responsibly applying the funds provided by ratepayers and taxpayers towards building our region and providing you with a brighter future. As custodians of your public funds, we have a duty to our community to provide value for money for ratepayers, improve service standards, enhance facilities for youth, families, the disabled and the elderly, as well as a commitment from Council to create an environment that encourages investment in our region, promotes economic prosperity and population growth, and most importantly, supports the sustainable development of all communities across our rural towns and villages, irrespective of size or location. Council has engaged intensively over several months now in working through the budget line by line, and together with our CEO and staff have made every effort to deliver a budget that provides a responsible and compassionate response to the economic challenges facing the people of our region. Having said that, this budget is far from perfect. Indeed, it is very much a work in progress, and I acknowledge that we have much more work to do, particularly in addressing the projected $3.52 million deficit. It is, however, an important first step and reflects the priorities outlined in Council's operational plan for the year ahead. It is a $108 million plan to build a stronger South Burnett through partnerships with higher levels of government and by working together through stronger connection to and better engagement with our community. In delivering this budget, Council remains conscious of the financial, social and emotional burden endured by our region's residents through the recent floods and the cost of living pressures brought on by the increasing inflation and interest rate rises. In response to such, Council has been careful to formulate a considered and measured response to supporting the community through these challenging times. A response that provides short-term relief without compromising the ability of Council to sustain a sound financial position and asset management strategy for future generations. As such, this budget, if adopted, will provide a modest 1.7 5% increase to general rates, with the application of 3-year averaging to smooth the impact of recent property valuation increases. $75 million worth of operational services to our region, a $33 million investment in capital, asset renewals and upgrades, $28 million in road maintenance and upgrades, and the introduction of curbside recycling. I must acknowledge the contribution made by the Queensland and Australian governments in providing grant funding from a range of programs supporting council's operational and capital programs. Having said that, I must convey our council's deep disappointment in the Queensland Grants Commission's decision to reduce our share of the Australian Government's financial assistance grant program by some $500,000. In this budget, our ratepayers will fund 88% of council's operating budget, with only 12% coming from government assistance. This is well above the state average for rural-based regional councils and places significant pressure on our organisation to deliver an increasing list of services once provided by higher levels of government. As such, we join other councils across Australia in calling on the recently elected Australian Government to increase the local government financial assistance grants provided to states from 0.5% to 1% of federal taxation revenue. We also call on the Queensland Government to address the inequitable allocation of these funds to our council. In closing, I wish to acknowledge and thank my fellow councillors, our CEO Mark Pitt, council staff, and in particular our General Manager Finance and Corporate Services, Susan Jarvis, and her hard-working finance team for their concerted efforts in bringing the 22-23 budget to fruition. I have a strong sense that the current decade will provide a renewed period of regional prosperity for our region. Thank you. I would now move that the Mayor's budget address be accepted. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Any speakers? We'll go to the vote.
Yes.
Sorry, yes, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your very positive address. Certainly, I've prepared a statement, and I do feel through the 22-23 budget deliberations with the staff, you're absolutely right. We have worked as a team. We've participated in over 20 budget workshops and committee meetings and engaged in robust debate. We've tabled and received an unprecedented number of reports and information that we have each questioned. We've held long discussions to ensure we fully understand every aspect of the budget, and we've painstakingly reviewed every general ledger and respectfully challenged every item of our operational and capital budgets. We have clawed out dollars, held our wages budget, knowing that some areas of our operation will struggle to meet the expectations of our community without more resources. And because of capital grants, we have funded our depreciation with a combination of own source revenue and grant funding. Like many households in our region, you are right, Mr. Mayor, we have recognised the rising costs of materials and services, and despite this found ways to cut our operational costs and hold a conservative budget for the assets we maintain and the services we provide. Setting this budget has been the most challenging task of my working career, and I would say that of many of my colleagues and team members feel the same way. This is because we have a profound sense of responsibility to manage our ratepayers' hard-earned dollars wisely. Councils are about core services, not profits, and our goal has been to ensure every dollar represents value. This responsibility has weighed heavy on our hearts because we genuinely care about the community and the region that we serve. But in my honest opinion, this is a no-frills budget. And in my view, like you said, very much a work in progress, as every quarterly review will be just as important as the next. While we can and we will survive on this budget, we will need to find innovative solutions and rely heavily on external funding to really thrive. We all must consider the review of rating categories, because from the desktop analysis undertaken, there are many industries that if they were operating in another region would be paying more. And this is because of the impact they have on our infrastructure, such as roads and wastewater networks. This budget belongs to the people of our region. We have listened to you, and you have been in the front of our minds since the very first strike of our red pens. This is the people's budget, and just like the people of our region are cutting their expenses and household budgets To meet the pressures of rising costs of living, so too are we. Recently, I attended the Australian Local Government Assembly in Canberra. I spoke with many councils about how they were going to balance their budgets. Many explained that in the current environment, it's a difficult task without increasing general rates, and I learned that many councils are doing just this at percentages of up to 5 and 6%. Many respected leaders I spoke to gasped at the idea our council may maintain a minimal increase of 1.75%, particularly over the next 12 months. Particularly as of the March 22 quarter, CPI has risen to 5.1%. Some advised me that it was irresponsible to adopt a rate increase below that of CPI and warned me that we would have to make it up in later years. This weighs heavy on each of us, as we know there is no easy fix. But over the past 2 weeks, I have anguished over this decision. My head tells me our levels of own source revenue at 88% are high, that rates can be an inhibitor for growth, and I know that all of the hours of work and grueling cost cutting is still not enough. But my heart knows that these dollars are coming from the pockets of those who live and work in our region, and that we as a council need to continue to find smarter, more efficient ways to operate. Recently in Canberra, I listened to an economist who worked over 30 years for the Australian Treasury. Paul Tilley was his name. Paul explained that there are many reviews that conclude property rates are a good tax for local government, and modelling demonstrates they are an efficient form of land tax. Paul mapped the history of Commonwealth grants first provided to councils in 1974 and explained that local government now receives less than half of the taxation revenue during the time of Malcolm Fraser served as Prime Minister. Paul demonstrated a long-term decline in funding to councils, and I would argue that our ratepayers are doing the heavy lifting to make up for the loss of government funding. Paul said he believed that both state and federal governments needed to trust local government because they are in fact the most efficient delivery partner. To trust local government means to fund local government. The financial assistance grants as a portion of Commonwealth tax revenue in 22-23 is estimated to be 0.55%. That's a reduction from 21-22 of 0.6%. We've taken a direct hit with the loss of $500,000 in our federal assistance grants, and in preparing this budget, we accept that this shortfall is beyond the means of our ratepayers. Clearly, CPI, loss of funding, and rising costs of materials are factors beyond our control. How we respond to them is what matters. While it will be turbulent because we have not factored in the negotiation of EPA, we've absorbed the impacts of rising CPI, the increases in our depreciation following a desktop analysis of around 1.5 and the loss of FAGs. But I support this budget because it's a demonstration of this council, both its elected and employed members doing the very best they can to balance competing priorities and deliver services for the people of our region. This is the people's budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further speakers? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, Council, 7.1, Adoption of Waste Collection Services Contract Recycling Extension at 17. Okay, now this matter has been considered at a Budget Committee meeting held on the 17th of June, whereby it has been recommended that South Burnett Regional Council, 1, resolve the introduction of a fortnightly commingled recycling collection service from 2 January 2023 for both domestic and commercial premises to divert recyclable materials from landfill. 2, amend the Waste Collection Services Contract, SBRC 13/14-02A with JJ Richards to include a fortnightly commingled recycling collection service. 3, the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to engage with the Cherbourg Aboriginal Shire Council to prepare a suitable agreement for the receipt and processing of recycled materials at the Materials Recovery Facility located in Cherbourg. And 4, develop a comprehensive stakeholder engagement and communication plan to facilitate the introduction of a new commingled recycling service. The plan to include pre- and post-recycling introduction media and community engagement campaigns. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. A second, Councillor Potter. Councillor Duff, you have your light on.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment and add an additional dot point.
Proceed, thank you.
A 50% discount be provided to all pension card holders, including those in receipt of an aged pension, a disability, and a single parent pension.
And a single parent pension. Okay, do we have a seconder for such? Councillor Erkins, thank you. Councillor Duff, please speak to your amendment.
I would like to put this amendment forward because in the short period that the option for recycling at $35 per half year was suggested, I have done quite a lot of community consultation, including general conversations with people on the ground. I have also received messages, emails, texts and Facebook comments from right across our region. The feedback that I am getting is that the majority of the ratepayers think that recycling needs to happen. They are also very supportive of sending it to Cherbourg. Most of the negative feedback has come from the most vulnerable in our community, and that includes the pension card holders. I asked for a breakdown of costs from the General Manager of Finance if we were to provide a 50% discount to all pension card holders. General Manager Jarvis was only able to provide me with those on an aged pension, including those outside the defined area that would not have a bin. The worst case scenario, if we provided a 50% discount to all aged pensioners, would be a cost of around $76,000. The actual figure of all pension card holders who would have a bin has not been provided, but to be consistent with the discount we provide to dog owners, I think we need to include single parent and disabled pension card holders as well as aged pensioners in this motion. I believe that this cost should come out of waste reserves and long term it would be covered by the savings made through reduction of costs of the landfill sites. I'm really keen in this time when costs are skyrocketing to make sure we keep an eye on those that are really doing it tough. I will read one comment that echoes the sentiments of many that I have spoken to. This was a comment on my Facebook feed. As a widowed pensioner, I struggle with rates, let alone something more that I don't need or have to pay for. If it is for those that want or need it, but not for everyone. On one pension, it is very hard just to keep up. I own my home, but everything is getting more expensive to the stage that it is impossible. And in capital letters, reality. I know there are other people struggling apart from those on pension cards that we can't specifically identify, but they can be helped through Council's hardship policy. In conclusion, I support introducing recycling if we make allowance for those who are struggling by providing a 50% discount to all pension card holders. As a council, we need to take into consideration a famous quote from Mahatma Gandhi. The true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Councillor Schumacher.
Mr. Mayor, I'm just thinking from a logistics point of view, we haven't actually tabled this. I know Councillor Duff put forward a request for information on the 29th of June, and we've since received an email. Can we, I guess, suspend? I'd like to move a procedural motion that we suspend standing orders so that we can discuss and receive all of the information in relation to the 50% discount. So I'd like to move a procedural motion that we suspend standing orders so that we can discuss the 50% discount, as we have not tabled a report in this chamber.
Before we proceed with the procedural motion, Mr. Sear, would you be so kind as to explain to the chamber the process and the implications of suspending the standing orders? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Without having the documentation in front of me, a procedural resolution to suspend standing orders allows it's basically puts a pause on debate, allows an open discussion, and then would resume to the point where the debate ceased once that period. So as part of the procedural motion, I would suggest you set a time to it, like half an hour, or if the move is acceptable to that, so that you have a period to discuss and then you move back to the debate. If you're finished early, well, then you can move back, but that would be a very quick layman's view, Mayor.
And Mr CEO, would the gallery remain open to the public?
Yeah, no, it's not to close the meeting, Mayor. It's just to stop. So instead of a formal process, which the budget generally is, as far as a meeting is, everyone has their one speech or talk, and then go to the right of reply and move. It allows it to be. It's much more like a standing committee format, Mayor, where you allow a discussion.
Good. Thank you, Mr CEO, for clarifying that for the chamber. So we have that. Time frame, Councillor Shoemaker?
I'm happy to put 30 minutes on it, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Setting yours for 30 minutes. Thank you, Bree. Do we have a seconder for the procedural motion? Councillor Potter. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Okay. Those in favour, hands up. Councillor Shoemaker, Councillor Erkins, Councillor Jones, Potter and Henson. Those against, Councillor Duff and Councillor Otto. The procedural motion has been carried. Standing orders are hereby suspended, and we'll now go into a discussion in relation to the matter. Over to you, Council. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So a couple of questions from the information that has been provided. And perhaps, I don't know whether we can get that up on the screen for everybody to see. My questions are more around the logistics of this. So the total number of properties currently receiving a rebate per property is 4,341. I want to confirm, is that just aged care pensioners, through you, Mr Mayor, for GM Susan? Is that aged pensioners?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor, no,
They're all pensioners?
They're all pensioners. It's on the advice received, I sent through was, there's 4,341 concession holders, and that includes carers, disability, New Start, so that does include them, yes. And I said there as well that that was the worst case scenario, because some of these people live on the outside and they don't receive that. But that was the worst case scenario there to do that that bit of math there for Councillor Duff.
And so the calculation that was done was that there would be 12,000 participating properties in recycling, and we would, to give a discount to those 4,341 rateable properties, there would be 7,659 properties that would have to pay an additional fee to recover the costs. And so the calculations put forward would be that we would charge those on a concession hold with a concession $1,750 for the half year, but those remaining properties would have to make that up. So I just want to confirm the maths here. So as a result, so age pensioners recycling for those 4,341 properties would go from $35 to $1,750, and that under this current proposal here, that everybody else in the region would have to cover that cost, and they would actually pay, what was the amount that everybody else would have to pay, GM Susan?
Through you, Mr Mayor.
Was it 45
Yeah.
property?
Now, the math there, Councillor, is you are correct. That would leave a remaining 7,659 properties. And again, this is only, we've based it on the 12,000 properties, but it could be 12,123, but just for the purpose of this exercise. So if you, that leaves a $75,967.50 gap. So you divide your remaining 7,659 into that, and it works out at $9.92 per property to compensate for the concession. However, if you need to make up that 76,000, that would then bring the bins up to $43 per bin for the remaining properties without there, and divide that by 2, which will be your 50%. The pensioners would actually be paying $21.50, not the $17.50.
Okay, so pensioners would pay
$21.50.
And everybody else would pay
$43 per bin.
$43.
Yes, per allotment.
If I could just interject, Councillor.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Duff, item 5 there, is it your intention that we adjust the pricing or that we absorb that cost within council's budget?
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you. Yes, no, I was just saying that we would absorb that cost through council's budget through the savings that we make out of not having to do so much work at our landfills. So that was my intention. It was never to change it from the $35, which we've been advertising to everybody that would be the figure. It's just that we would absorb those costs. That was my intention.
So, General Managers, just before we go back to Councillor Shoemaker, currently we're looking at, is it $35 per half year approximately? So $70 for the full year. And Councillor Duff, you're proposing that would not change if this was adopted by council. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Back to you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That's certainly not represented in the motion or in the information that I've been provided. So my question is, through the team, General Manager O'May or General Manager Jarvis and certainly Councillor Duff, how would we actually fund this shortfall? So it's a $75,967.50. Where would those funds come from? Because there's not a lot of fat in anything that I've seen. So what's the proposal for funding this?
Oh, God.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So the idea is that it would be funded out of the waste. Any surplus from the waste area is restricted for future capital works and future operations. So it would be funded from those reserves which are put aside for future works. The costs that we have calculated are based on trying to fund those future works. So yes, it could be funded out of that, but at some stage that will need to be paid. So those money are put aside for particular projects in the future. So it would just reduce the money that you put aside. So at some stage that will need to be recouped.
So just a supplementary question, sorry, Mr Mayor, for clarity. So is that coming from the provisions that we put aside to rehabilitate landfills? So the money that, or is that coming from your capital forward planning budget?
Yeah, no, so it's coming from the money that's put aside for those future works, the installation of the transfer stations when the landfills close, all of that. Say for this year, that money's being used for the way bridges, those sort of works. So it is any of those works that are included in our future waste management operations.
So just final one question. So how does that impact our long-term capital works program? If it's taken out $75,000, do we have to consider increasing waste levy rates into the future to meet that shortfall? Because I'm confused how we would actually replace that money if we're not charging it.
Yeah, that's it. It would be recouped over the long term. So it's in the short term. There is cash reserves there that could absorb that reduction, but so those calculators are costed. So yes, it could potentially mean a slight increase over year on year in years going forward.
Can we have a look at the 10-year forward capital program for waste in making this decision? Because this is actually an impact to the works that we have planned in the pipeline. So it's not that I'm against it, but I need to fully understand what we've put on the table, and this has not been discussed prior to this meeting. I think would be interesting, General Manager O'May, I'm just trying to understand what projects would be immediately impacted by this process, because it's my thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, we would have to increase our waste levy costs next year considerably to cover this. And if I've got that wrong, I'd like some clarity.
Thank you, General Manager. Is it possible to get that up on the screen?
Yeah, I think we've just sent it through to Bree. So our 10 years capex is in the next couple of years is right. It's in the later years where the larger actually, as you can see through there. So years 7 or 8 are sort of where like you've got large capital expenditure projects. So like next year, we don't have any capital works program in the waste budget. So that's the same. So in the short term, those funds aren't going to be needed. It's more in that 10 years, sort of that year 7, 8 down the track. The introduction of recycling in that. So this is probably, obviously these figures are going to need to be reviewed, because if we introduction of recycling, we're reducing the amount of waste to landfill. If we can push those capital works out, so say if year 7 becomes year 9, then you've got longer time to actually save up for those larger capital works. So that's probably what I'm saying, is that certainly short term that the fund can absorb those costs, and then you can recoup it like slowly over the time. I wouldn't be looking at putting a big increase next year just to recoup it all in one lot. You could actually like have smaller increases over that time before you get into those larger capital work projects.
Just to confirm, that would mean though, into the future, everyone can expect to pay, have to make up the $75,000 discount somehow, and that would mean into the future, whether we do it immediately or over a period of time, we're basically agreeing to this, we're agreeing that we're going to increase whatever waste environmental levies we collect to make up the shortfall.
And I'm assuming if you do introduce it, I'm assuming you would introduce that going forward. So if it's, I'm not sure if it's a 75,000, is that on this half year? Is it 150 going forward each year? So you would sort of be looking at. We obviously model each year those figures, but you'd have to take that into account.
Okay, Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just looking at these figures, I'd actually like to see what the forward projections would be like if we took out the 150 that would not be accounted for in the forward projections. Is it possible to get a rough idea of that through you, Mr. Mayor? Thank you.
Manager Finance, would we have the cash flow for waste?
Actually, probably just a comment. So the recycling won't. So this capital waste program was developed prior to the introduction of recycling. So this is really based on just the current program that we have. So the introduction of recycling comes. So there's additional costs, and that's what the $35 or the $70 per year is to fund. So. Yeah, so it isn't actually in there at the moment. We're adding a new expense and a new revenue source. So yeah, so just a quick, probably if that helps Councillor Potter's question. So, but if we are running if we introduce a recycling service and we are losing $50,000, $70,000, $100,000 a year, then that's when it does impact, because it will reduce. If you're losing money on that, then it starts to impact this.
So, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, it's just like a follow-on question. So if we're losing 150,000 through that new scheme we're looking at bringing in through the recycling, that will have an effect on this capital budget we're sitting in front of us. So this will actually be down by 75 for 6 months, was that? So 150 a year. 150,000 over a 12-month period. So I'd actually, so where would that money be coming from? Because we've still got to pay for the process, Mr. Mayor, and I'd just like to get my head around where it sort of sits and how we're looking in the forward projections, because that's 150. So by the end of 10 years, it's a lot more than 150. So it's like we're looking at 1.5, but then you've got CPI increases on top of that. So I'd just love to sort of see what figures that is.
General Manager Finance, what are you thinking?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's too many variables there to be giving you like General Manager May said, we haven't figured in the revenue, the costs and that, but and I don't want to be leading council astray, but that, to clarify for the council, that's 75, it's nearly 76,000, that's per half year. So that's 152 per annum cost that we have to recover. So I just want to clarify that. But otherwise, that it's a very complex spreadsheet we've got here, and there's too many without checking formulas. If you, excuse us with that. Thank you.
Councillor Erkins.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. While I appreciate that we have a budget that we must work within, I believe that our ratepayers and our community also have budgets. We've been told that in the short term it's not an issue, and I believe we do a budget every year, so we can look at again next year. But this year, at the moment, we are looking for our community. They're having interest rates increased, they're having the price of fuel increased, they're having the price of power increased, their rates have increased, and the cost of food. And they're just some of the things that are increasing. I believe that as a councillor, I'm elected to look after the interests of my community. And I believe there are many, not only pensioners in our community, who are going to be struggling with paying these added costs. And I believe that while recycling is very important and our community are very much in favour of recycling, this added cost to especially pensioners is an increase that many will struggle with. And that's why I'm supporting Councillor Duff's motion.
Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it is a curly one, of course, but I pose the question that in the event of this, we're virtually asking our other ratepayers to subsidise that. Now, we all know fuel, rates, interest, the whole lot is going through the roof, as our budget will explain. Just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, this waste levy, this service, will not be implemented until January. So I just would like to make that clear. It's not something that's being laid on our ratepayers as of next week in this first quarter. If we don't do this or do something with this, it will go back to the table this time next year. So we're 12 months behind the ball. As Councillor Duff has alluded to with social media and our communication with our communities, all I seem to have had is about time, bring it on, yes, we need it. We all know where our waste facilities are headed and our space and the costs involved in that. What is the cost to our community if we don't start doing something now? We know very well what the cost will be next year and the year after and the year after that if we don't start the ball rolling now. CEO and Councillor Shoemaker and I only saw last night that it's being implemented in our neighbouring councils, and to our surprise and delight, that's been there for quite some time and been accepted by the community and been paid for by the community. So, yeah, I can't just support this, and you all know very well, I have a 92-year-old mother. My mother stated that, yes, about time, and it was tabled here in council some years ago, and I remember the survey well. Yes, same argument. People want recycling, they don't want to pay for it, some do want to pay for it. We look to our future and look at those youth council that comes into this chamber, and what is on the tip of their tongue? It's recycling, and it's where we go in a cleaner, greener future for our communities. They're our future and they want it. It's not us. It's not for me to decide. It's for what our community needs. And yes, it's a fee. It is a fee. We're talking a $80, $90 per week fee, I think was the figure was first bandied around at a $35 for the 4,341, $35 per half year. That's correct? Yes, that's correct. 26 weeks into 35. Quick arithmetic, it's around that $60, $70 mark. So yes, curly one, we've got costs across the board everywhere. Everyone has. We're all ratepayers. Do I support recycling? Yes. Do we want to wait another 12 months for it? I don't think so. This is in 6 months' time we start. And I am sure, as council, we can work and review it next year. So I'm supportive of recycling, but I just at the moment cannot support this motion that's on the table from Councillor Duff. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Erkins.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, can I just ask, Were we just not told that we could absorb it, council could absorb it for this year in the money that we have there?
Yeah, through you, like, yeah, it is just going to reduce the surplus in that area, which was going to be put aside for future capital works. So actually, off the top of my head, say the waste business unit is predicting, say, a $400,000 surplus. It will be $325,000 surplus theoretically this year. It is just basically absorbing those costs in out of the reserves that have been put aside in the short term.
Thank you. So council are in a position, they have savings and are able to carry that. Many of our residents do not have savings and will not be able to carry it. The other thing, Councillor Henson, when you say about bringing it in, it's about time. As a resident of Nanango, who prior to amalgamation, we actually did have it in Nanango. It was the council that took it off us. So it's not like we don't know about recycling. It's not like we're not supporting recycling. As I said in my earlier address, it's only that I'm concerned about the residents and those who are the most vulnerable and those who cannot afford to carry it. They want to do it, but they cannot afford to carry it. And I believe the motion is not for us to add that extra onto other residents. It's for us to absorb it. And also next year we'll be doing another budget. We can then look at where we stand financially, where our residents stand financially, and the state of the financial situation overall.
Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions for you, Mr. Mayor. So for starters, with regards to the recycling, I would like to understand, I have been asked the question through my Facebook post with regards to whether we're going to have recycling bins at the transfer stations that are out and about in the area. And the other thing is, Councillor Duff, your motion here with regards, you've actually singled out age, disability and the single parents pension, but I don't know whether that's quite feasible, whether we should just leave it as pensioners, because you've got carers pensions and things like that. So there's a lot more pensioners out there than just the ones listed here. So maybe we should just leave it as pensioners, because they're the numbers that we were given, I think. Or was that just aged pension through you, Susan? But I'm thinking we should just leave it as pensioners. And if seriously, if this is what's going to get this recycling budget through, I will be voting for it.
General Manager Jarvis, the current pension concession that we provide to on our general rates and also on our dog registration fees, how do we assess eligibility for that? I think that answers the question. Is that through the production of a pension card?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's a general concession card that we give the discounts for. So on production of the pension card, like we said, carers, New Start, that's how we then provide that discount to the
So are you
pensioners.
suggesting that, so on the pension, so is that on the production of a pension card?
Yes.
I don't believe that job seekers would have a pension card.
It's a concession
So it's
card,
actually a
Mr. Mayor.
concession card. Right. Okay. So Councillor Duff, then when you refer to, I think that should say pension card holders there, Bree. Should that say concession card holders? In which case you would not need to then specify the categories if you were wanting to be consistent with Council's current policy in relation to other concessions provided. So I'll seek your input on that, Councillor Duff, as
Thank
to
you, Mr. Mayor.
item
Yeah,
5.
happy to change that to concession card holders.
Thank you, Bree. Thank you, General Manager. Back with you, Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to know about the, what was my other question, about the transfer stations, whether we're going to have recycling bins at the transfer stations. Thank you, Mr.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, no, so the proposal isn't to include recycling bins, so it is the recycling bins have been modelled on providing where there's a domestic waste service. At some facilities there will be the ability to have recycling, but not at all of the say some of the remote transfer stations for the recycling truck to run out to pick up a handful of bins will be. So we can certainly investigate options of increasing recycling in those areas, but it really isn't. It is probably a separate issue looking at that than the introduction of a curbside. This is specifically the curbside recycling service in line with the domestic wheelie bins.
So, General Manager, I think I sent an email through about this some days ago. Seemed a little bit crazy to me that we have a national park without a recycling bin at the Bunya Mountains. I'd like to see us include recycling bins at our transfer stations, particularly at the Bunyas, where it's an environmental, probably precinct that we want to take care of. So I'd like to throw that out to the council as well to consider that as part of this motion. Okay. Councillor Jones, I know you've been waiting for some time. We better give you a go.
I'm quite patient today, yeah. Going nowhere fast, but the minute. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of observations through the conversation that's been had already. I believe that Cherbourg, that we're proposing to send the recycling materials to, I believe the feedback is that they're ready to go. If we start the recycling, they'll be able to take our stuff, GMP.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we have had conversation with Cherbourg, so they have confirmed they will be ready. They're not ready today. We couldn't send it over there today, but by the end of the year, that they said they will do whatever they need to make sure that they can accept the recycling.
Thank you. And further comments, Mr. Mayor. I believe that if we don't move on this now and be ready to go on in January, there is another council that neighbours us that Cherbourg are negotiating with now. So it may put us in a very vulnerable position that Cherbourg may already be at their capacity if we don't move on this. Now, getting back to the 150k spend and the comments that Councillor Erskines has made and Duff, 150,000 and the GM has indicated that we can absorb this cost initially. We do set budgets every 12 months. I would like to, and I know this is a question that couldn't be answered now, is the fact that how much we are expecting to save if we introduce landfill recycling on the cost of the landfills. I would think it would be pretty substantial because what we're hearing is around about 37% of what we're already putting in the landfill is recyclable. So that would be a significant cost, which would nearly compensate the 150k spend, I believe, in the first year. So if we were to go ahead and spend 150,000 and absorb it, as has been suggested, I think that's a pretty good investment simply because it'll give us 12 months to implement the recycling and it will give us a very good idea on what the savings are going to be at our landfills. Then we can address it at the next budget discussion and set rates and whatever else appropriately. So keeping in mind, Cherbourg will be ready to go in January. There is another council circulating that want to send their rubbish and recycling to Cherbourg. So if we are slow off the mark, we could lose that opportunity and then have to send it to Toowoomba, which would cost the ratepayer more. So what Councillor Duff has proposed here, I will support it today. I'm happy with the 150k spend simply because it will give us that opportunity to find out exactly what the savings are going to be. It may well be that it's self-funding. It may be $150,000 saving in the landfill and compensates 150,000 that we're absorbing to implement it. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm happy to support this. Put the $150,000 investment into getting some really good data in the next 12 months to enable us to make better and more informed decisions moving forward. We have the opportunity at the next budget to reset fees and charges and certainly have a look and understand the full saving at the landfill. So I will support this today.
General Manager Jarvis, you've been waiting patiently. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We've just got a thing from our rates department to say that the concession cards as well, if we could also identify the Department of Veteran Affairs card as well, please. It's separate to a concession. So if we can identify that as per our policy in the resolution of Councillor Duff's there. Is that right? Please? Yeah, DVA concession card. Thank you.
Thanks very much, General Manager. Councillor Shoemaker.
Just the last thing, thank you for the opportunity to discuss this. The only thing I was thinking is, in terms of your motion, Councillor Duff, could we add that this is an incentive to introduce recycling for this first year, and that it will be reviewed in the coming year? Because I don't want to set the precedence that we are actually going to do this every year. The reality is every budget and every year is very different. By all means, I think it would be wonderful if we could, but I'm just mindful of the realities and the fast-pacing change in waste. So I'd just like to propose that we make it an incentive for the introduction of recycling for the first 12 months, and that's reviewed with the next budget.
Okay, that's a matter for you, Councillor Duff and Councillor
Pensioner
Erkins.
discount.
Councillor Duff and Councillor Erkins.
So through you, Mr Mayor, I would have thought that that was a given. We negotiate the budget every year in any case.
Through the Mayor, please, Councillor.
No, I don't agree to add that to it. I think too often we do that. So that's this year and that's it.
Okay. Righto. Well, I think, Mr Mayor, how are we going for time? 1 minute to go.
Actually,
Anything further? Oh, sorry, General
Actually,
Manager O'Mahony.
just a comment through you, Mr Mayor, for the council. So the introduction of recycling services, council's aware we are re-tendering our garbage service at the end of 2020. So in 18 months, so over the next essentially 12 months, we will be going back to tender, back to market for new garbage service, which will include a recycling service. So there will be, as I said, it is a moving feast with the forward forecasting, the costings, changing interest rates, change things. So yeah, there is a lot of forward forecasting work. So yeah, just want to make, there is an opportunity. We will be going back to market in that 18 months time frame. So it's a good time to just have this introductory service.
Okay, thank you. Time's now up, so I'll now move a procedural motion that the meeting resume in accordance with our standing orders. Do we have a second? Councillor Shoemaker, those in favour? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. So we have the amended motion in front of us, Council, a proposed amendment as moved by Councillor Duff and Councillor Erkins. Each councillor has one opportunity to speak to that. Councillor Duff will have a second opportunity to speak as right of reply under our standing orders. So Councillor Duff, if you'd like to now speak to your motion, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think that it's pretty well been covered. As Councillor Erkins has said, a lot of our pensioners are doing it tough, and I know a lot of our community are doing it tough, but this is an opportunity to support who I think are the most vulnerable people by giving them that discount, and that's been the sentiment I've spoken to people that are from across a broad spectrum of the community, and they're all sympathetic towards those most vulnerable, which is pleasing to know that we have a caring community, and I think that it'll be much better received, this whole recycling proposal, if we show that we are supporting those people that are doing it really tough. So really keen to have this amendment supported. Thank you.
Further speakers? Councillor Erkins.
I also believe it's been well debated here today, but one of the things that I believe as councillors that we now should be doing is getting out and encouraging our community to make sure that they recycle properly, because if they don't do that, and if they don't use the recycle bin responsibly, then it's not going to be the saving that we want. So that's, I believe, what we should be doing, and I'm supporting it.
Okay, Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you. I'd actually like to thank Councillor Shoemaker for letting us discuss this. That was really a good conversation, and I appreciate that. Look, I think this is a great motion, and I do agree with Councillor Erkins. The media that we put around this and the information we get out to community will probably be one of the biggest things we can do. And it's not only recycling, then we can include the other type of waste, because, we can actually cut down what we take to our tips by 66% roughly, because 33% was recycling, 33% was compostable waste, and the rest was landfills. So there's a lot we can do in this space, and we can, if we can reduce it by more than 33% by the different types of advertising through our media that we have in the audience here, which is wonderful. I think that's the best thing we can do as a council.
Okay, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Just fixing up this discussion. This is not about, for me, and I'm only speaking about myself, this is not about supporting the vulnerable or anything like that. This is about being fair and consistent. Now, Councillor Duff made a mention there before about dog registrations, all that. So this is just falling into line with all the other policies and all the other procedures that we do when we're setting rates. So that's what it's about for me. It's being fair and consistent to everybody across our region. And we are elected to make tough decisions. And we're not the only council in the Queensland or Australia that has people with insurance rises and rate rises and everything else. We're here to make hard, tough decisions. And Councillor Shoemaker's alluded to it. This has been a tough budget. And I'm starting to really get concerned because we're nearly at the bottom of the barrel for giving. And we're going to have to work really, really hard next budget. This is a really tough budget that's been delivered. And like I say, I understand the toughness, and I see it every day. I talk to people, I go out, and people are doing it tough. And it's not just the pensioners. And there's people in rural sectors, there's people right in the middle of our towns that are doing it as tough as everybody else. And we need to understand that. We just can't keep singling out sections and say vulnerable, vulnerable. Our whole community is very vulnerable at the moment, and we need to represent the whole lot of them. And there's tough decisions to be made, and that's what we're elected for. So that's what these discussions are about, and it's good. I'm happy to support this. The 150K that we can absorb in that first 12 months, I believe, will set us up for very good information for the next budget. We can reset our fees and charges. Councillor Erkins alluded to. If it's not done properly, there will be no savings. And where we go for the next 12 months, after this 12 months, who knows? Who knows where it takes us? But I'm happy to support this, and it is a tough time.
Councillor Henshaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through you. Yes, as Councillor Potter alluded to, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker, and I guess for the public that are watching, for bringing this back to a standing committee. This is what you have to do. Rather than be lumbered with something here in the chambers and move a motion or want to make amendments, a great debate. And through that debate, there's been things here that's been brought to the table in relation to Cherbourg. If we lost the ability to take our waste to Cherbourg, that would be massive, when we would be back at the table deliberating and debating the costs that would be to take it over the range, to be at Western Downs or in the Toowoomba region. So that has been, to me this morning, a wonderful, constructive debate, and I appreciate Councillor Erkins and Councillor Duff's comments. And the bottom line, recycling, we have to do it. A wonderful conversation last night with CEO Mark and Councillor Shoemaker in relation to composting, and that's another avenue that we can explore, and I'm sure we'll be getting emails from that meeting last night, which will be another avenue we'll be exploring in this chamber, no doubt. Will there be costs? Yes, there'll be costs. Will there be benefits? Let's hope so. As Councillor Jones has alluded to, and Manager O'May, if 150,000 is gone towards this project where we can stand in this chamber next year and have a better direction as to where we go with recycling, that's got to be a win-win. So appreciate the conversation, and thank you, Councillor Shoemaker and Mr Mayor.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm fully supportive of the motion here on the table. I too have been listening, watching the Facebook commentary, and certainly listening and engaging with our community since being elected in 2020 about recycling. In particular, I've been listening to our young people, our next gen, and I wanted to talk to that because it's been quite a journey. And the reality is that these kids, they are very educated, they're very aware, and they're asking the tough questions, and they're looking at us all and asking us to do better. They've been taught in school 3 key words: reuse, repurpose and recycle, and they ask, why don't we have a recycling bin in our backyard, Councillor Shoemaker? It's a good question, and the answer to that I've found is complex. There is history, and we all recognise that household finances for everyone in our region are stretched. But the reality is the problem is not going to go away, and the solution is in our hands, within our grasp, and those kids are looking to their leaders, because they know that change starts here today with us. Each week, 14,317 bins of household waste go directly into landfill. That's a fact. We have an opportunity to model the behaviours that are taught in our schools to do better by our next gen, our people and our planet. Earlier this year, we had a look at what's in our curbside recycling bins, and we did find 32.59% of what we're throwing away could be recycled. That's a fact. Recycling is one small step. It's not the only answer, and state government waste reforms indicate we will have a choice to either make some changes and do better now while we have the time to change, or be forced to. The alternative is that our ratepayers will pay more for the practice of landfilling everything in their curbside bin into the future, a practice that doesn't align with my values and certainly doesn't align with the values of many people I've spoken with in our community over many years who feel strongly about the introduction of curbside recycling. Grandmothers have told me they've seen their waste change over decades. What once came home in paper now comes in plastic, and we know that some plastic will outlive us. Some plastic can take up to 1,000 years to biodegrade. That's a long time for even the smallest bottle in your bin this week. Grandmothers have told me they expect us to all do better by their grandchildren, and that they're willing to take responsibility for their household waste, and they're willing to find the money in their household budgets to make it happen. School teachers have written to me with the facts. They're looking at council to make change for their community because they know what it means if we don't. New residents have told me they're disturbed by the fact that they are to forget the behaviours they changed because they had curbside recycling in another region and feel it's wrong to now default back to putting everything in one bin. We have some incredible people collecting and recycling everything they can, and we should absolutely celebrate their efforts. But the reality is, even with this, last year we all contributed to 13,887 tonnes of waste that we buried in landfill. Can you just imagine what that volume looks like? And that potentially 32.59% could be diverted from landfill and recycled with this decision. It's important we understand that dumping waste into landfill is not free. Currently, the state pays council annually to help us pay the waste levy back to the state government without charging the full cost onto our ratepayers. This levy is designed to help or hinder those councils who make changes to the way they do waste. And while we have been helped in the past, this financial propping up is not guaranteed into the future. We must make changes to the way we do waste. We must all take responsibility for our waste. So when someone says to me they can't afford to pay for the responsible management of what's in their household bin this week, the answer is simple. You already do. If we don't look to do better into the future, it is clear the costs will increase. We have a unique opportunity to work with our neighbours at Cherbourg Aboriginal Council in providing the reliable feedstock for their material recycling facility, and we all accept that there will be learnings along the way. This decision, the contribution from every household, will employ local people, will support the creation of a circular economy, will extend the life of our landfills, and will mean we do better in the way we care for our planet and do better by our next gen. Personally, I feel landfilling recyclable material doesn't make any sense. Some ways, someone will always pay, and it's not fair that we shift the costs and the responsibility of our household waste to the next generation. I'm fully supportive of this motion. I'm fully supportive of providing a concession to pensioners during this first 12 months while we introduce this program, and I thank Council for the support.
Okay. Right. Well, General Manager O'May, could you perhaps just share with us, I believe we've received a grant from the Queensland Government in relation to the weighbridge while we're on this topic at Nanango. Would you like to share that with us so we can make the public aware of that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, so we do have, we did put in this year's capital program, we are installing a weighbridge over at Nanango. That's a legislative requirement. So there's a cost of around $600,000. We did apply for a grant, and we have been just advised this week that we've picked up a 60% subsidy for that project. So yeah, that is good news. Good and bad news. The bad news is that we did actually apply for 80% subsidy, and we only received 60. So there will be actually a budget adjustment because we've actually budgeted that. So, but yeah, we are grateful to get the 60%, and we also did receive funding for new waste management strategy and climate adaptation strategy under the same program, and 60% of that funding as well. So, some really good news this week. Now we'll have a report, I think next week's meeting, just on the.
Thank you, General Manager. And General Manager, the waste levy rebate that we get from the Queensland Government, there's been some debate and conjecture about that, but I believe we've had a commitment from the Queensland Government over the next number of years. Can you perhaps just explain that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so this one I was leading. I have got a report coming to next week's standing committee just outlining this one, but we have, in the last week of June, we received 4 years' worth of the state levy rebate. So the state pays a rebate to council to cover the householder the levy. So when we pay a levy to the state for everything that goes into the landfill, but they do pay a rebate to offset the domestic waste disposal. So it's calculated annually. What they've done is actually provided 4 years in advance. So we've received a big cash injection into this area, which will offset the next 4 years worth of those rebates. So, and part of that is I suppose, hopefully that councils will take on waste reduction measures because we actually get to keep the rebate. If we can reduce the amount of money going, if we can reduce the amount of waste going into landfill, then there will be a financial windfall in that hopefully the rebate will be more than what we do have to pay back to the state. So, yeah, the earlier that we can reduce what's going into landfill will be a positive. So, and I'll have detailed it in a report for the standing committee with the figures and that for next week for council information.
Thank you, General Manager. Just before we go back to Councillor Duff to conclude, I'd like to, and I hope that all my colleagues would join me in congratulating and thanking the Palaszczuk government for the leadership they're showing in relation to waste and the leadership and support they've showed our council in providing 4 years' worth of levy for the next 4 years, and also in providing a $360,000 grant towards the Way Bridge at Nanango. And I did read in the paper this week that they've actually now moving to, I think, ban certain products, particularly styrofoam coffee cups and those sorts of things. So we're simply following, I think, what's been some tremendous leadership by our own Queensland government. Over to you, Councillor Duff, now to conclude the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this recommendation with the amendment. The feedback is, as I've said before, the majority of people want to have recycling. It's wonderful that we can support Cherbourg. I think that's going to be a really good news story. We need to do a comprehensive education process, as Councillor Erkins has said, because if we don't get it right, we're not going to get those savings. And again, this amendment looks to Council to consider our concession card holders, who I believe are the most vulnerable in our community. So really commend the recommendation. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, it'll save me sorting it out in the minutes. In point 5B, could we just put South Burnett Regional Council introduce a 50%? Oh no, it's up the top. Just introduce, I'm just fixing grammar. Introduce a 50%. So introduce, yep, introduce. No, sorry. No, that's all right.
I'm confused as well, Mr. CEO.
Just tidies it up so we don't have to worry about it
Yes,
for the minutes.
thank you very much. You're very correct there, Mr. CEO. You should have been an English teacher. Okay, right. Well, we're about to go to the vote on this amendment, which, if passed, would then become a substantive motion. So those in favour? Okay. The amendment has been carried unanimously. It now becomes a substantive motion. So, Councillor Duff, another opportunity to speak to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I've said enough.
Any further speakers? Councillor Jones.
Yes, just one quick comment, Mr. Mayor. I'm just very interested to hear about our General Manager speaking about being successful with the Waste Management and Climate Change Grant. I just want to put a question to him through you. Is that able to fund the $150,000 fee, possibly to introduce the recycling, because that certainly would contribute to climate change?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. No, so that wouldn't be able to use to offset the 150 because there's a specific project deliverables for that grant is the development of the complete review of council's regional waste management strategy and the climate adaptation. So yeah, it wouldn't be able to do that. But what the upfront payment of the rebate does allow council to that cash in the bank, which allows us to obviously absorb cost upfront and we can recoup, as I said, later down the track in years to come. So yeah, the payment cash in the bank always helps. Never hurts, I would say.
Okay, Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to acknowledge how important that waste strategy will be, climate adaptation strategy will be. We've got enormous opportunities through the work that we've done in our waste stream, and certainly the introduction of our new waste compliance officer and his passion for this. I think we've got enormous opportunities here in our region to do much better with waste, and it's just so exciting. This is a first step. I know we've been talking about this since we were first elected. It's just wonderful that we've made some progress and are moving forward. So I look forward to working on this over the next 12 months.
Good point, Councillor. And Mr. CEO, I think if we haven't done already, I'm sure we'll write to the Premier and thank her for her support of our council in leadership around this issue. Yeah.
Certainly, Mayor.
Okay. Further speakers before we go to Councillor Duff for another crap? I'd just like to... okay. Thank you, Councillor Duff, for bringing this to council. We'll now go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay. Now, I think we're probably ready for morning tea, are we? Should we break for morning tea? I'll move that we now adjourn the meeting for morning tea. Seconded, Councillor Henson. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. We'll resume at 10:30 a.m. Councillor Henson, thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Okay. Councillor Duff, you got your light on? We're at 7.3. Councillors at 21.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to change the officer's recommendation in the capital budget to be amended as follows, and I've given it to Bree there. I'll read it out if that's okay.
Yeah, if you could, thanks, Bree. And once we get that on the screen, we'll get you to read that for the chamber. Thank you. Mr. CEO, please feel free to interject if there's any issues with the motion or the process. But you comfortable at this stage?
Yeah, just the one thing. So so is it an amendment or is it the motion moved with that added? Because if it was like just process, if it was voted up with that added to it, that's fine. If it was voted down, it votes down the whole budget, not just the capital component of it. So whether you wanted to move, Mayor, the resolution and then amend it, or amend the capital component of it, or did you want to deal with the capital component first?
I think we deal with the capital component first, Mr. CEO. We certainly don't want to launch an attack on the entire budget as such, for want of a better term. So we can deal with this as a motion, Councillor, in relation to the capital budget alone.
And then, that'd be fine. And then whatever process this comes out the end of, and then the rest of the budget documents are adopted. Brilliant.
So we'll take this as an individual motion. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'd like to move that 1.5 million allocation from the Works for Queensland program 2021-24 for the Mount Rural Reservoir be reassigned to water and wastewater depreciation funds, in brackets accumulated cash. And dot point number 2, the following projects with nominal allocations totalling $1.5 million be funded from the Works for Queensland program 2021-2024. Cooper's Gap viewing platform, $80,000. Lions Park Kingaroy completion, $150,000. Mergen Half Court, $50,000. 9 car park shelters BP Dam, $100,000. Tipperary Flat Park Nanengo renewal, $250,000. Proston Lookout, $50,000. Proston Wiener Display, $30,000. Geelong Camping Ground, $100,000. Cumbia Apex Park upgrade, $200,000. McKell Park Wandai, seal the car park and replace the bollards, $100,000. Tingura drainage upgrades, $60,000. Wandai Coronation Park shade infrastructure, $150,000. And QE2 Park Mergen Stage 2, $180,000.
Do we have a seconder? No? Seconder? No seconder. Councillor, we have a seconder, Councillor Erkins. Okay, please speak to the motion. Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. These projects have been put forward by councillors on behalf of their communities at a recent budget workshop. The costings for each project were decided at that workshop. In the past, the projects put forward for Works for Queensland have only ever been estimates. The list I have provided was a list that the councillors would like to see done over their term of council. I think that they are a perfect fit for the Works for Queensland funding. I believe that the funding for the Mount Rurul Reservoir to support Kingaroy Water should and can come out of the water and wastewater budget surpluses, as the Mayor has suggested in previous workshops. I think that the users of the water should pay for the water. I think that this one large project for Kingaroy should be replaced by lots of small projects right across our region. The state government have listed in the guidelines the aim of this grant program is to create jobs across regional Queensland by supporting eligible councillors to undertake job-creating maintenance and minor infrastructure projects relating to assets which they own or control. I think that by doing a large list of smaller projects, we will be supporting the intention of the grant and helping our communities with lifestyle and resilience. Nanango is celebrating its 175 years next year, and I think that doing up Tipperary Flats is essential to support the town and community for this major celebration. Proston is celebrating 100 years next year, so the Weena project will help to finish Railway Park, and the Proston Lookout will help Proston showcase the town. Geelong has a new fuel cell and an upgraded truck stop, and the store has recently opened so by putting a campground on the site, it should give those businesses a real boost. It was a project that was put forward by the Geelong community as part of the community plan discussions. I have replaced the Mergen High School project that I had on the list after our meeting yesterday. It needs a larger budget and there are a number of design options. It was suggested that it would fit better under the LRCI funding. The QE2 Park project in Mergen needs some additional funding to complete both stages. Deputy Mayor Jones has said on many occasions the amount allocated for Mergen originally would not be enough, so this is an opportunity to do both stages, and as Councillor Hanshin often says, to do it once and do it properly. We had a deputation for the Tingura drainage to be upgraded. Coronation Park in Wandai badly needs shade, and McKell Park is a highly utilised car park that should be sealed. Councillor Hanshin put forward the Cumbia Apex car park and the Coopers Gap wind farm viewing platform. I know Councillor Potter is really keen to finish Lions Park in Kingaroy. The BP Dam project with the shade shelters at the cabins came out of a recent meeting with the manager that a number of councillors attended. There is a lot of work to be done at BP Dam, but the priority project for the manager was shade shelters over the car parks, so this would tick that box. I think that with the communities all doing it tough, with rising costs and a rate rise in this budget, that this is our opportunity as a council to give back to community. It is our opportunity to show that we have a regional focus and that we have listened to our communities. There is a saying that small acts, when multiplied by millions of people, can transform the world. I would like to think that in our case, small acts, when multiplied by hundreds of people, can transform our region. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First of all, look, we've had this debate countless of times before in this, and it was passed at the last, I think it was the last council meeting, we passed it that we would actually, because a lot of these projects are not even scoped yet. So they need to be scoped, they need to be done right before we even start looking at funding them. And I did move in that last motion a couple of weeks ago for these to be scoped and these to be looked at funding through our council funds that we have, and search for grants as well for them. But look, the problem here is, as I said, taking the money from the accumulated cash, if I'm on the understanding through you, Mr Mayor, the money that we're saving up through accumulated cash is actually going to be used later on down the track for the Mergen water supply. Is that correct, through you, Mr Mayor, to
General Manager,
manage?
thank you.
Through you, Mayor. So our accumulated cash is our surpluses from our operational budgets to go into our accumulated cash to do our 10-year program. So that's the first 10 years is concentrating on water. Then after that time frame, it switches over to do the Mergen wastewater treatment plant and going forward to fund those projects going forward.
So if we were to take that money out of that, that's a project that we probably wouldn't have the cash for the Mergen wastewater treatment plant in 10 years' time. So, it's all well and good to take the money out now and use it, but we've got to look to the future for our communities. So do not agree to this amendment.
Okay, further speakers. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through you. You're right, Councillor Duff. I do say do it once and do it well. The Cooper's Gap viewing platform, we have figures thrown there at us. That hasn't been costed. It was costed some 18 months ago, but we know that that figure won't be relevant today. The Apex Park in Cumbria. There's, to my knowledge, been no costings done on that. The Tingura drainage, personally myself, I'd like to see $60,000 added to that. There's $60,000 in Tingura on the side of a hill will not do a lot of work there, and those residents in Tingura are looking for answers there, and when we do that, we do it right. $60,000 probably won't go far in Tingura. Coronation Park shade infrastructure, $150,000. QE2 Park, $180,000. The Proston Venus, $30,000. Like, we go on. The Geelong campgrounds, they camp there now, and that needs to be scoped as well. We talked about, and as you said yourself, Mayor, the tennis courts. There's one tennis court there operational, so there needs to be some work done there in relation to getting that right for the people. Love to take it away from the neighbour beside the hall, but they camp there, and that fuel cell, you're right, it is a wonderful facility there. They're stopping there now. So there's a lot of work to do this, and as Councillor Potter has alluded to and commented on, yes, it was passed in the last general or standing committee meeting that I think Councillor Jones, you moved that, Councillor Potter, that you moved that grant funding be sought and future council funding for these projects. So of course they all need doing. We have something like the $1.5 million when you say the users of the water should pay for the water. Is that across the board where the users of anything that council supplies should pay for it? Because we're going to implement that strategy on the users of the water pay for it. I would hate to see in 10 years' time the water treatment plant in Mergen not be able to be funded or cut short and not done properly. Do it once and do it well. So I'm nervous. These, of course, they need doing. Fully supportive of those projects being done, but not fully supportive of this, taking the $1.5 million to do these. We will work as a council to do that. We've got some great, I think there's 17 projects we have that's going to be done with that LRCI funding? I think 17, correct me if I'm wrong. 17 projects. These are wonderful, and they all, I am sure, in time will get done with diligent work within this council chambers and our managers and the costings of it. So I just cannot support this. Fully supportive of my community and all their wants and needs, but there's work to be done in this space. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Certainly my head's spinning a little bit, to be honest. I feel like I've had this debate, I don't know how many times, since the Works for Queensland allocation was actually first announced. And we have compromised because originally I had actually pushed for $2 million for the Warrulan Reservoir, which is key trunk infrastructure. It's key critical infrastructure. We all know that. And the reality is that our capital works budget, as much as I wish it was, it's no magic pie. You can't just take all of these cool ingredients, throw it in, and then create everything all at once. The reality is there is compromise, and I've learned that. I absolutely support all of these projects. I would love to be part of all of these projects, and I intend to be, because I agree. I think we've got a lot of work to do in terms of scoping them, in terms of engaging with our community, because I've learned anything if we're going to build something new, and certainly through the extensive consultation we've done this period of council, I've learned that community input is king with these sorts of projects. And I think we're well on our way, but I cannot support this motion, as I have said time and time and time again in this council chamber, that I cannot support this motion because I feel, yes, building a reservoir is not a politically appetising project. We won't get to go and cut a ribbon, and not everybody in the region will see the benefit of this reservoir. But the reality is it will make a giant difference, and it's one small step in terms of fixing our water issues here in Kingaroy. I do not believe water and wastewater should be cross-subsidising each other, and that's what we're doing. The figures that the Mayor sprouted last time we had this debate, he's right. When you look at those figures, there is some money there, because the funds that we're collecting from wastewater will prop up the water budget enough to try to meet the needs of our failing water infrastructure. And the reality is, in 10 years' time, when we need to start turning our mind to wastewater, we've used all of our wastewater funding to fund the water infrastructure. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I really do think that cash is king. And I will not sit in this chamber and spend cash just on a whim. Because I know in the time that I've sat in this chamber, there's been very little cash that we've put in the bank, I can tell you, that hasn't been tied to something. The cash we've restricted has been for future works and future projects that are critical to the sustainability of our region. There's been no cash, there's no magic money tree out the back where we've been rolling in cash, despite what people have said. There's no magic money tree, there's no cash that we're just throwing in the bank that we can throw around on projects that we would like to do. That's a luxury, unfortunately, this council doesn't have. Certainly, I am fully supportive of these projects. I absolutely believe that we can work with our community, we can scope them up, we can get them in the pipeline, and I know with the introduction of a new community capacity building officer and a grants officer, we'll be well on our way to deliver some of them. And I think our communities absolutely deserve them. Livability is a key. These are livability projects, and unfortunately, time and time again, we see our budgets cut for core needs, and the livability challenges. The livability of regions like ours is a real challenge. But the reality is we need a reservoir. We can fund it with government funds, or we can fund it with ratepayer funds, and I know which funds I'd rather use. So I will not support this motion purely on the fact that this is critical infrastructure. I've had this debate so much, my head is spinning. The reality is we need a reservoir at Warrulan. I will not spend cash to fund something that the government can fund for us. And I look forward to working with the community on all of these projects and many more, because I've actually got quite a list myself.
Councillor Erkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So while some of these projects that are listed here I have been and looked at, really my main interest is in the Tipperary Flat in Nanango. And I'd like to know, if we don't use this funding, next year is our 175-year celebrations, where would the funding come from, and how long would it take for our project to be actually done? Councillor Shoemaker says about not spending cash, but you know, how much cash did we put into the Kingaroy project? For a resident in Nanango to see the money that's been spent there, and then to see a park that was established for our 150-year celebration, and in the last 25 years has basically been let fall down. All the equipment there is white ant damaged. It's just a big mud puddle at the moment. Whenever there's rain, it is really a disgrace. It's the entrance to our town. I appreciate that the Kingaroy project looks great, but I also appreciate that there are other residents outside of Kingaroy who see that they're not getting the things that they would like to see improved in their town when they see another $1.5 million going to the water in Kingaroy. I'm not debating that that is not a great project and a needed project. However, if we're going to have a grants officer, surely a grant for something as important as water would be able to get priority for some of these grants. Whereas, as I said, I mean, there are other projects here that would be great for our communities right across the region. So that's why I'll be supporting the motion.
Okay, Councillor Jones, did you want to add anything to the conversation? No? Okay, you're right. Okay, well, I'll make a few comments and then we'll go to Councillor Duff for right of reply. Look, the reality is that we do, as General Manager Lowe has indicated, do have to consolidate our water and wastewater budgets. If we were not to do that, it certainly would be challenging in light of the fact that the two have significant needs, and I acknowledge that. And just to again share the figures that Councillor Shoemaker, you said that I sprouted last time, I'll share them again. So water and wastewater will, after this year's full capital program is delivered, have a surplus at the end of the financial year of almost $6 million. Next year, after we deliver all of our capital program, another significant investment, we'll have $8.5 million left. 3 years down the track, we'll have $10.5 million left in the bank. That goes to 13 million, almost 12 million, 11 million, 12 million, 12 million, 12.5 million, and 17 million at the end of year 10 to go towards the Mergen wastewater treatment plant. I have real concerns that while the criteria does allow for essential services projects such as water supply, were we to have this conversation with the department and the government, they would refer us to the aims of the Works for Queensland program. I'd like to share them with you. The aims of the Works for Queensland program council is clearly stated here by the Queensland government when they gave us this money. The aim of this grant program is to create and or sustain jobs across regional Queensland by supporting eligible councils to undertake job-creating maintenance and minor infrastructure projects relating to assets which they own or control. Now, it is my understanding that the building of the Rural Reservoir will be all undertaken by external contractors from outside our region and will not create any local jobs. The placement of the roof on the old reservoir, we're having challenges getting builders to even quote or show interest in that because they are so busy. So, aim number one, will it create jobs? No. Is it minor infrastructure? I would suggest that it borders the line of being major infrastructure when we're talking a 5 megalitre reservoir costing anywhere between $1.5 and $2 million, that in fact may not meet the criteria of minor infrastructure. So I would put to council that we have significant amount of funding left in cash in the bank and more than sufficient to fund the reservoir. And that the Works for Queensland funding isn't intended for projects that don't create employment and could potentially be seen as major projects where funding programs like building our regions are more clearly for that purpose. In terms of there being no costings or scoping done, councillors, we have included a number of projects in our previous Works for Queensland discussions that weren't scoped or costed. A number of projects. When we put in projects such as Lions Park and Mergen QE2 Park and set funding aside for those and many others, they weren't designed, costed and scoped and costed. We chose what Councillor Duff has referred in here in her resolution as a nominal allocation. That's the process. We nominally allocate and then we go about the process of designing and costing and building. That's how these grants often work. Now, I would suggest that, our staff are capable of moving funding within this particular outdoor spaces category internally if one goes over, another comes under, to balance the $1.5 million as part of that design and construction process. And I look at this list and we talk about needs and wants. And we talk about doing something once and doing it well. The Lions Park Kingaroy is a great project. I think it'll be tremendous to see that finished in the next 12 months to 2 years. The Mergen Basketball Half Court. Councillor Duff invited us to meet in Mergen yesterday, and I met there with Councillor Ergens and Councillor Duff and the members of the community, and we had a group of young Indigenous boys come up to us and say, Miss, when are we going to get our basketball court? I spoke with Mayor Elvie at Sherbrooke. She said how popular basketball is for Indigenous youth. We have many Indigenous youth that live in Mergen. I would suggest that probably half the kids in Mergen are First Nations children who have very little to do because we don't have facilities. We don't have the facilities that other towns have in Mergen. 9 car park shelters for DP Dam. BP Dam is probably the asset that generates more revenue for this council than any other. And why shouldn't we be investing in its development if we want to raise money into the future so that we don't have to rely so much on our ratepayers? Because many people that stay there come from outside and bring money in. Why wouldn't we invest in an income-generating asset? Gee, if it was my business, I would be. Tipperary Flat in Anango, 175-year anniversary next year. If we don't approve and get that happening, it won't be ready for 1 January. One of only 4 towns in Queensland. Drive past that now and see the mess it's in. We're hoping to have the Premier and an entourage of people from Brisbane here for the festival, along with many other people that will travel into our region. And the first point of entry into Nanango will be drive past what is effectively, it's almost a dam with the water that's laying in there. It's just mud and it looks very untidy. Proston Lookout. Proston community have been advocating for this for some time as an opportunity for them to promote their town. The Proston Wieners donated to the community. The community's asking us to chip in a little bit to create a display centre for the people of Proston. The Geelong Camping Ground, if this isn't passed, they've asked me to come back and let them know what the outcome of this is, because they've been advocating for this for some 18 months, since I was elected, and I told them I'd put it to council. If this isn't passed, I'll have to go back and tell them, sorry, Geelong people, you won't be getting your camping ground in this year's budget. Perhaps in future budgets we can look at it. How much money do we spend in Geelong with all the rates we collect from the Geelong Region Council? Cumbia Apex Park upgrade, $200,000. That's a heavily utilised park in Cumbia. Now, I went out there and I had a look at that, and I spoke with residents the other day, and they told me that they are having young families leave Cumbia because they don't have a childcare centre, they don't have a proper park they can play in. Will it take us another 2 years after this round of funding to get money to upgrade their park so we can move the caravan somewhere else and provide that for the children of Cumbia? Do they not deserve the same as other towns have? A nice, neat park that they can play in? McKell Park, Wondai. We've been approached by the Wondai Running Festival. Some 700 runners this year, more than 2,000 people. And as I drove, I spent all of Saturday there and most of Sunday. The shops were full Sunday morning in Wondai. They've asked for us to upgrade McKell Park so that they can start the carnival next year so that they can have a sealed surface on their car park, where people are currently parking in less than desirable circumstances. The Tingura drainage. I think the Tingura people would like to see us make a start, at least on that main street, Muller Street. Wondai Coronation Park street infrastructure. Again, the running festival, the community is saying we'd like it to start in Coronation Park, not in McKell Park, because businesses at the northern end of Wondai are feeling as though they're not getting sufficient exposure. And if this thing grows to 1,000 runners next year, there won't be room in McKell Park to cater for them. That brings millions of dollars into our economy. QE2 Park Mergen, we know that it'll only complete stage 1. But wouldn't it be great to, again, do it once and do it well and have stage 2 completed all the way down to the to the bottom section across from the IGA, where many people sit without shade. Mergen has one park in the centre of town. for people to congregate and have lunch and spend time. So yes, we could put these aside. Yes, we could scope and cost them. Yes, we could wait for other rounds of funding. But how long will it be before we see these projects across our region? I think there's very good grounds. I think the finances add up. I think the accounting numbers are there that demonstrate we can fund these water reservoir out of our own cash. And I think it would be a real shame, Council, not to deliver these projects in the next 2 years in accordance with the Queensland Government's expectations. So I would plead with you to support Councillor Duff in this initiative and do it for the people right across the South Burnett region who I believe will welcome this, not for political reasons, but because these are things that our community needs. And with that, I'd like to commend and support this motion and hope that my colleagues would do so as well. Councillor Duff, to you for right of reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm concerned that what Councillor Potter said, for example, is actually to indicate that we're actually taking money out of the water budget and that Mergen water would not be able to be funded. That water is funded through the surpluses from the water and wastewater over a long period of time, and we're working to pay all of that. This is not about Mergen's water. This is about what we spend Works for Queensland money on. Works for Queensland money is, as has been articulated here, meant for job creation, to build resilience, to help our communities. It's not meant for one big water infrastructure project in Kingaroy. Like, I just am really, really upset if this, I would be incredibly upset if this doesn't go through. Imagine trying to get, like we're saying we're going to get a grants officer, imagine trying to get all of those projects through grants when we have this opportunity to get those projects happening right now. We've already said we wanted to prioritise, for example, that big project that Leo Garrity's team have got in there in Mergen for Creative Country to try and get that one going. But imagine if they had their headache of trying to get all these small projects, which is exactly what Works for Queensland money is all about. We could just tick off all those just with this one vote here in the chamber. Like, I'll be horrified if we spend what should be water money through that water allocations and the surpluses that we got, that millions of dollars to take that opportunity for all the small communities. The spirit of the communities is we're putting a rate rise. We've had droughts, we've had COVID, we've had floods, now rising costs. I will end with a quote to support my argument. We're better off doing a number of small projects across our region than one large project in the centre. It's a quote by John Wooden. It's the little details that are vital. Little things make big things happen. I hope that my fellow councillors will see fit to support these 13 small projects so that we can see a big benefit to the morale of those communities that will flow on right across the whole South Burnett. Thank you.
That concludes the debate. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Erkins, Councillor Duff and Councillor Otto. Those against? Councillor Shoemaker, Jones, Potter and Henshin. The motion has been defeated, 4 votes to 3. We'll now go back to item 7.3, which is the adoption of the 22-23 budget at 21. Officer's recommendation is as presented. Can we get that up on the screen? Thank you, Bree. That pursuant to sections 169 and 170 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council's budget for the 22-23 financial year, incorporating 1, the statements of financial position, 2, statements of cash flow, 3, statements of income and expenditure, 4, statements of changes in equity, 5, capital budget, 6, long-term financial forecast, 7, revenue statement, 8, revenue policy, adopted by Council resolution on 25 May 2022, 9, relevant measures of financial stability, and 10, total value of the change expressed as a percentage in the rates and utility charges levied for the financial year compared with the rates and utility charges levied in the previous budget as tabled be adopted. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter. Seconder? Councillor Jones. Speakers? Councillor Potter? No? Further speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I absolutely agree, Councillor Duff. Little things do make big things happen, and this budget, there has been a lot of little things that have made up this budget. We've worked really hard as a team through all of the challenges. I absolutely respect the debate that we've had in relation to some of the projects in our capital works budget. And I really do hope that we can work together to achieve those outcomes. My real reason for supporting this budget is the ratepayers of our region, and they have been in the front of my mind the entire time. The reality is, if we don't use grant funding for big projects, those costs are borne by our ratepayers. That's the reality. I feel there's absolutely nothing I could have done better. Turned up, rolled up our sleeves, got our red pens out, worked hard on this budget. The team have worked late into the night. I just feel it's, at this current point in time, the very best that we could do. And I am fully supportive of adopting our 22-23 budget, noting that it will be very much work in progress, and every single quarterly review will be just as important as the next one.
Further speakers? Okay, no further speakers? Okay, we'll go back to Councillor Potter shortly. Before we do, Councillor, I'm going to probably do something historical here, and as the Mayor, I'm going to vote against this budget today. So it is my view, as I articulated only moments ago, that it would be inappropriate for us to spend the $1.5 million on the reservoir in Kingaroy. We have invested upwards of $18 million in the main street of Kingaroy, and that's been great for the people of Kingaroy. I'm absolutely in favour of supporting water infrastructure in Kingaroy. I live here. But I believe the appropriation of funds for such should come from sufficient reserves that we hold, and I'm not comfortable for voting for a budget that takes away the opportunity for me as the regional mayor, looking across the entire region with a view of the entire landscape from one corner to the other, that takes away the opportunity for me as one of the team to deliver these projects that I believe under Works for Queensland would have been a tremendous uplift for our community. So as the mayor, I won't be supporting the budget. I'll be voting against it today. Councillor Potter.
So Mr Mayor, could I...
You've had your opportunity, Councillor Duff. We're now going to close, but okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Before Councillor Potter, and then Councillor Potter will have a right of reply.
So sorry, I'm going to also vote against the budget. I've been a councillor for 18 years, and I've never seen fit to do this, but I'm very disappointed that this, I believe that this budget does not support where it could community, and that this allocation of money would have made such a difference. So I'm supporting the Mayor and voting against the budget.
Okay. Any further speakers? Those who haven't had a chance to speak? Okay. Well, we'll go to Councillor Potter for right of reply. You've had your opportunity to speak. Thank you, Councillor. In accordance with standing orders, your right of reply. Thank you, Councillor Potter.
Thank you. Firstly, with regards to some of those projects that were done, they are all great projects, and I don't deny any one of them needs doing. With regards to the Wieners, Mr Mayor, they actually belong to SBRC. They weren't donated. They were actually part of the Wieners belong to the South Bennett Regional Council because they were part of the sculpture prize from the Kingaroy Art Gallery. But look, I would like to acknowledge, it's probably the good time to do this, that I'd like to acknowledge every single staff member from the CEO down. I realise no matter what area you work in or position you have, this budget has and will affect you for the next 12 months, as it will continue to affect all of us. I personally feel that with the rising prices of nearly everything, it will not get better, but it will get worse. And so for this reason, there will be all eyes on the first quarter review. To the staff members that work late into the nights and early mornings and on weekends, we thank you. To the staff members that had sleepless nights trying to figure out where you can cut your budgets right down to the office supplies and milk, we thank you. I do look forward to a year where we can learn, grow and work together using learnings from this year's budget, and to start next year's budget with more knowledge as to where the interest rates, FAG, CPI and inflation will be, as this year was like a roller coaster ride without the safety bars. In conclusion, I wish to give my heartfelt thanks to every single one of our staff for their dedication and professionalism. In a time of pandemics, turmoil and international turmoil, we can face the challenges together and provide the best outcome for our communities. So, and I would like to recommend this budget to the people, please.
That concludes the debate. We'll now go to the vote. Okay, those in favour? Councillor Shoemaker, Councillor Jones, Potter and Henson. Those against? Councillor Erkins, Duff and Otto. Motion has been carried 4 votes to 3. We'll now progress, Council, to item 7.4, business activities 22-23. Now that's at page 23, where the recommendation is that in relation to Council's business activities, in accordance with the Local Government Act 2009, Division 2, Section 43, and the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council determines that as shown in the Statement of Significant Business Activities, Table 1, it has no significant business activities that meet the threshold set as per Section 19 of the Local Government Regulation 2019. 2, Council determines that those business activities categorised as prescribed business activities and listed in the Statement of Prescribed and Other Business Activities, Table 2, are those activities that meet the prescribed activity threshold of $340,000 in accordance with Section 39 of the Local Government Regulation 2012. 3, Council resolve not to apply the Code of Competitive Conduct to any business activity in 2022-2023 in accordance with the Local Government Act 2009, Section 47(7) and the Local Government Regulation 2012. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter. Seconded, Councillor Henson. Thank you. Speakers? To the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.5, Statements of Estimated Financial Position to 30 June 22 at page 28, whereby it is recommended that pursuant to Section 205 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the Statement of Financial Operations and Financial Position of the Council in respect of the previous financial year, the Statement of Estimated Financial Position be received and its contents noted, and we have there as presented those statements being items 1 and 2 as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Henson, thank you. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the Statement of Comprehensive Income, CEO Mark, I would really like to hear some commentary from you in relation to this result. Myself, I'm thinking, looking at it as a demonstration of how hard we've worked to conservatively hold our budgets here in Council over the past 12 months. It's also a demonstration of how much cash the state government's been so keen to give us, along with the federal government, and the challenges that we'll have in that regard in terms of the fact that it might look like we've got a very comfortable cash balance, but that cash will be needed for future years' operations. So, CEO Mark, I think your team has done an enormous amount of work throughout the year, and I would really appreciate some of your commentary in relation to the estimated financial position at which we finished, which, if I am looking at this correctly, looks like a surplus.
Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thanks, Councillor. Through you, Mayor, there is a recorded surplus. So we've moved from the deficit position of just on 3 million, and there's been, I won't go into depreciation because that certainly has impacted our books over a period of time. I'll get the exception out of the way. It's almost in this day and age that probably sounds like the little shop owner that you run 2 sets of books, ones that's actually happening and one that the government tells you have to do by the standards. No, we don't, but just it feels like that some days. When you take the extraordinary early payment of the financial assistance grant out, which netted us about $2 million in cash, which is restricted for the year, so our cash position will hold the same for this coming financial year. We pulled the deficit back from about the 3 million mark to about give or take 700,000. It's still, the final numbers will still flow through. But it's the second year in a row that we've been able to return a better position than what was forecast. And Actually, without sounding all gushy, councillors, staff, the whole organisation, it's the whole lot of us that are working towards this, and it is what can be demonstrated when there's a clear goal and a team approach. And I would acknowledge all councillors and staff. Everyone chips in for this. We'll continue to try our very best to find anywhere that we can improve or do things different. The operational plan we adopted the other day held some of those initiatives for the next 12 months, which I won't go into now. But yeah, it's an exceptional result, even including the fags. And I suppose I will be a little bit selfish, is that it's a little bit, I've used the cricket analogy before, it'll be on the scoreboard in 10 years' time that this year is a surplus, fags or other. But yeah, we almost got, well, we'll wait to see. And I would love to have done it in our own right, but anyway, we'll wait to see. But the deficit should be, if you take the extraordinary fags payment out, the deficit will sit around that give or take 700,000 mark. And that's an exceptional result for an organisation that's Mayor's speech earlier on and others. We're just copping it from the reduction of the fags grants and external influences that are far beyond our control. Insurance premiums. We have a lot of external factors that we can't influence as far as cost, and the depreciation, and the fact that we're absorbing that and still returning a better result. I would acknowledge each and every one of us as working towards this, and yeah, was extremely thrilled. As politics aside, as Paul Keating said once, these are a lovely set of numbers.
Good quote. Thank you, Mr. CEO. General Manager Jarvis, did you want to add anything? Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. There's not a lot to add to what CEO Mark has just said. Possibly just to draw to your attention, supporting the amount of work from councillors and all the staff, that we did actually pull back 1.8 million from our original budget there of last year. So, and yes, the fags did assist us in coming through with a surplus, but if that may not have happened there, we probably, like I said, the deficit would have been a lot lower than our predicted net operating result on our original budget. So I just want to take the opportunity again just to, sorry, not again, but to thank all the councillors and all of the staff involved in the preparation of the budgets. We've had over 20 workshops, and we certainly have taken on board all your comments. We've tried to cut where we could cut. We've really agonised over this budget, just to be fair to everybody, because all of us are ratepayers as well. We understand that. But I particularly would like to acknowledge my finance staff, especially Kerry here, Manager Kerry. The amount of work, the time that my team have put in, late nights, early mornings, weekends. They've all got families at home, and I want to give my thanks to their families for letting us have so much of their time. The amount of quality reports that they've produced over the 6 months has been amazing as well. And technically, Kerry, I would say, would be one of the best I've ever worked with or ever seen. And I just really would like to thank her for that, and the rest of my team, and all of you councillors, and especially the executive leadership team and all of the managers. So I really appreciate all of this. And we also had end of year, which went very, very well. And we've been down a few staff with COVID and maternity leave and vacancies. So we've struggled a little bit this year with staff, but we've got there. So thank you all.
Yeah, thank you both. Okay, further speakers? Okay, who was our mover? Councillor Shoemaker? To wrap up, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just think certainly commend this to the chamber and acknowledge the efforts of our team. This really is a testament to all of the hard work that has gone in these past 12 months. I think it's, whilst we're starting a new budget here today, important to reflect on the learnings of the past 12 months, and they have been great. This is an exceptional result in the circumstances. We have delivered some incredibly large projects, projects that have experienced incredibly large increases in materials, and we've managed to maintain that, which is an extraordinary effort. I think we should be very proud of the work that we've done. As a team, we've done our very best being the custodians of ratepayer funds, and I'm just really ecstatic to see this statement of comprehensive income, because I can tell you that's not what we expected this time last year. So thank you to everybody for your continued efforts. I know it's been tough. I've seen people with sweat in their brow. We have squeezed our staff throughout the year through all of the works and the projects that we've done. And when I think about in reflection where we've come from, it's been an extraordinary year. And just thank you to everybody who has contributed to this effort. It's a very impressive effort.
That concludes the debate. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.6, differential general rates categories and criteria, 22-23 at 31. Recommendation is that South Bennett Regional Council adopt differential general rates for the year ending 30 June 2023. Pursuant to Section 81 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the categories into which rateable land is categorised, the description of those categories, and in accordance with Sections 81.4 and 81.5 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the method by which land is to be identified and included in its appropriate category is as listed in the table below. Council delegates to the Chief Executive Officer the power, in accordance with Sections 81.4 and 81.5 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, to identify the rating category to which each parcel of rateable land belongs. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker. Second, Councillor Henson. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have certainly learned a lot through this differential general rating review and the work we've done dating back till late March. I was looking through my notes just earlier this morning, and we've been working with a subject matter expert, John Perry, and I've learned so much. I think there's so much more we have to do with our differential general rating categories. I think the real challenge I've seen is you think you can tweak one area and make it better for somebody else, and the reality is you seem to make it worse for somebody else. So this needs to be done very carefully. It needs time. We need to really look at what's fair and equitable across the different categories. I think there's enormous learnings in the space of industrial operations and certainly renewable energy, how we factor them in and ensure that we are receiving the appropriate amount of rates for the operations that they conduct in our region. So I'm happy to support this, but I am noting that I believe this must be a focus for our next year. I think we've come a long way from the year before last. We did some extensive work in setting the last budget around our differential general rating categories. I believe we've built on that this year, but I believe we cannot take our eye off the ball, and we must continue that work in the year ahead. I think there's some certainly some gains to be made for our region through a comprehensive review of this process. And when we've done analysis with other regions, we have seen that can be achieved in a fair and equitable way. So I'm fully supportive of adopting these categories and the criteria, however, noting that this must continue to be a work in progress for the year ahead.
Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, 7.7, adoption of the differential general rates at 22-23, page 44. Just want to give a little bit of background to this. A revaluation for land was performed during the 21-22 year by the State Department and will come into effect as at 30 June 2022. Council initially calculated the rate of the dollar based on the new land valuations and only collecting the same amount of general rate revenue in 21-22 year from each rating category. Once this base rate in the dollar was calculated, the 1.75% increase was then applied. Rural residential has also been rolled now into two categories, a rural residential category and a rural residential black butt category. And the recommendation is that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 80 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the differential general rate to be made and levied for each differential general rate category for the year ending 30 June 2023 is as followed. The table is as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers, Councillor Jones. Further speakers, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to I'm going to support this today because we haven't had time to have a comprehensive look at what we need to do into the future, but I've always been in favour of looking at banding and different types of rating strategies because it challenges me to see when Mergen has like 3.72 and some of the other towns are like 1.51. Nanango, well, Mergen's 3.72 and Nanango's 2.9, and it's hard for people to get their head around it. And the reason why it's like that is because the towns have different valuations, and so we try to if the town's got a lower on average, a lower valuation, we lift the rate in the dollar so that we get more money for that particular area. But I think that if into the future, if you've got a property in Kingaroy or Nanango that's worth 100,000, it should be the same in Mergen, the same rate in the dollar. I'd love to see us to go towards that. I know it's a lot of work, a lot of changes, but I definitely think into the future that's something we need to look at. Thank you.
Further speakers? Anything to conclude? Councillor Jones? No? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.8, minimum general rates 22-23 at 47. Recommendation is that in accordance with Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 77 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the minimum general rate to be made and levied for the year ending 30 June 2023 for each differential general rate category is as follows, and being the table on as presented on pages 47 and 48. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.9, averaging land valuations 22-23 at 49, where it is recommended that pursuant to Section 74 and 76 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, for the purpose of making and levying differential general rates for the 22-23 financial year, the rateable value of land is the 3-year averaged value of land. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, second Councillor Jones. Speakers? To the vote, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.10, special charge rural fire brigades 2022-23 at 51. Recommendation is that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 94 of the Local Government Regulation 2012 and Section 128A of the Fire and Emergency Services Act 1990, Council make and levy a special charge to be known as the Rural Fire Levy Special Charge of $25 per rateable assessment on all rateable land within the region to which the overall plan applies. That also attracts a Class C emergency management levy pursuant to Part 3 of the Fire and Emergency Services Regulation 2011 to fund the operations of the rural fire brigades that operate throughout the rural areas of the South Burnett region. The overall plan for the Rural Fire Levy Special Charge is as follows. The rateable land to which the plan applies is all rateable land within the region, other than rateable land that is liable to pay an urban district fire levy, pursuant to Section 107 of the Fire and Emergency Services Act 1990. The service, facility or activity for which the plan is made is the ongoing provision and maintenance of rural firefighting equipment for the rural fire brigades that operate throughout the rural areas of the region. The time for implementing the overall plan is 1 year, commencing 1 July 2022 and ending 30 June 2023. The estimated cost of implementing the overall plan for the 22-23 year is $218,550, and the level of contribution each brigade receives will be decided by the local area Rural Fire Services Committee. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I'm very keen to support this. The Rural Fire Brigades do a wonderful provide a wonderful service. They're mostly volunteers, and just wanted to, I think it's a great way of ensuring that they have the adequate funding to keep those brigades operating efficiently. So very keen to support this. Thank you.
Further speakers? Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's so good, Councillor Duff, that we can agree to agree, isn't it? And the Rural Fire Brigades, as we're part of, is very important, and I know being part of one myself, this is greatly appreciative and a great incentive, because Rural Fire Brigades don't get a lot, although the work with Queensland Fire Brigade and Services now is much greater than it was several years ago. So great initiative and fully supportive of this, and who knows, there might be more coming to Rural Fire Brigades in the future. Thanks you, Mr Mayor.
Further speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.11 special charge annual implementation plan road maintenance Wattle Grove Road Quarry 2223. We'll go to page 53. Recommendation is that pursuant to section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and section 94 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council make and levy a special charge to be known as the Kingaroy Quarry Supplies Wattle Grove Road Special Charge of $9,139 on land described as Lot 459 on FY 1925 and situated at 1304 Wattle Grove Road, Wattle Grove, to fund road maintenance and reconstruction costs associated with the operation of the extractive industry operation at the site, and that Council adopts the annual implementation plan and the proposed special charge for 2022-23 financial year pursuant to the Revenue Policy 2022-23 and the Revenue Statement 2022-23. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers? To the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.12 special charge annual implementation plan maintenance Tim Dwyer Road Quarry at 57. Recommendation is that pursuant to section 94 of the Local Government Act and section 94 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council does not levy a special charge on the Tim Dwyer Road Quarry situated on land described as Lot 169 on CSH 697 or 79 Tim Dwyer Road, East Anango, in the 2022-23 financial year, as the quarry has not commenced significant operations, and that Council adopts the annual implementation plan for the 2022-23 financial year pursuant to the Revenue Policy 22-23 and the Revenue Statement 22-23. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers? Councillor Erkins, thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. I'm just making an inquiry on this, because haven't we just had an email come in from a resident complaining that they are using that quarry? I might be wrong, but I was under the impression that a resident is complaining about the traffic coming on the road, the fact that they are using that quarry.
Thank you, Councillor. General Manager.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Yeah, absolutely correct, Councillor. That correspondence come through yesterday. To the best of our knowledge, that is not happening, and we've checked with the planning guys, and they haven't been notified as well. So we need to do some further follow-up on that. But having said that, when this thing was done, our information is that it is not happening at the moment, but that charge can be implemented all through the year anyway.
Mr CEO.
Thank you, Matt. The other aspect to it would be if they do, these are generally a staged approach, so there may be operations, and I think in the wording of it, it's significant operations, they'll have a threshold point. So how much, and when they return the license returns, we would have to check the threshold. So they may, like some of these quarries will operate, but they don't hit the threshold until they go to the next stage of charge. So it will bear, whilst the resolution or the recommendation today is sound, it will bear further investigation depending on what they do. And on occasions we do have operations that provide, and certainly not saying this one is at all, but it's a truth and cross-checking to ensure that what the reports are is actually what's happening on the ground. So that will bear further investigation, Mayor.
It's
Thank
just,
you, General Manager. Thank you, Mr CEO. Back to you, Councillor Erkins.
sorry, it was just that in the email that I sent, I think one of their concerns was the use and the damage to the road. And I do believe that a rubbish truck actually went off the road there this week.
General Manager.
Through you, Mayor, I've got no knowledge of that one, councillor, but we can follow it up.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Managers. Okay, Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you. With relations to this one, again, with what Councillor Erkins was saying, as long as this one, I did hear you say correctly that this can come back to council any time throughout this next year if things change or if we get different information through. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So for this one, I believe probably General Manager may be better placed for this, but I would believe if they actually do start some sort of work, they have the first intent would be that they have to upgrade the width of the road, and then there is trigger points along how much extraction goes as to whether it triggers X amount of charge. So it is a stepped approach.
Thank you, General Manager. Further speakers? To the vote, those in favour, carry unanimously. Thank you all. 7.13 is Special Charge Annual Implementation Plan Road Maintenance Wilson's Road Quarry at 61. Recommendation is that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 94 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council make and levy a special charge to be known as the Gordon Brook Sand Quarry Wilson's Road Special Charge of $4,492.24 on land described as Lot 94 on BO 544 and situated at Wilson's Road, Gordon Brook, to fund road maintenance and reconstruction costs associated with the operation of the extractive industry operation at the site, and the Council adopts the annual implementation plan and the proposed special charge for 2022-23 financial year pursuant to the Revenue Policy 22-23 and the Revenue Statement 22-23. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, seconder. Councillor Henson, speakers. To the vote, those in favour. Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.14, Special Charge Annual Implementation Plan Road Maintenance Burrabri Road Quarry. That is at 64. Recommendation is that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 94 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council does not levy a special charge on the Burrabri Road Quarry situated on land described as Lot 67 on BO 576 or 1229 Burrabri Road, Geelong, in the 22-23 financial year, as the quarry has not commenced significant operations, and that Council adopts the annual implementation plan and the proposed special charge for 22-23 financial year pursuant to the Revenue Policy 22-23 and the Revenue Statement 22-23. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Jones. Speakers? To the vote, those in favour, carry unanimously. Thank you all. 7.15, Special Charge Annual Implementation Plan Road Maintenance Manar Road Quarry at 67. Officer's recommendation pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 94 of the Local Government Regulation 2012. I'll certainly remember those two. Council does not levy a special charge on the Manar Road Quarry situated on land described as Lot 7 on BO 179 or 1551 Manar Road, Boondooma, in the 2022-23 financial year, as the quarry has not commenced significant operations, and the Council adopts the annual implementation plan and the proposed special charge for 22-23 financial year pursuant to the Revenue Policy 22-23 and the Revenue Statement 22-23. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, seconded Councillor Jones. Speakers? To the vote, those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.16, separate charge, Community Rescue and Evacuation 22-23 at page 70. Recommendation is that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 103 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council may can levy a separate charge to be known as the Community Rescue and Evacuation Separate Charge in the sum of $5 per rateable assessment to be levied on all rateable land in the region for the purpose of sponsoring the aerial emergency rescue and evacuation transport providers that service the South Burnett region. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers? Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. You know, I just think that they provide a wonderful service, and I've never had anyone complain that they pay that $5. I think it's a very justifiable to charge that small levy to support such a wonderful service that is provided to our community.
Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.17, separate charge, waste management levy, 2022-23 at 72. Recommendation is that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government 2009, Local Government Act, and Section 103 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council may can levy a separate charge to be known as the Waste Management Separate Charge in the sum of $174.50 per rateable assessment to be levied equally on all rateable land in the region for the purpose of providing and maintaining waste facilities and services that are not met from other fees and charges collected on a user pays basis, and meeting public expectations in matters of disposal of refuse that affect public health and visual amenity of the area. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Duff. Speakers to the vote? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.18, waste collection utility charges, 22-23 at 74. Recommendation is that in accordance with Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 99 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council may can levy waste management utility charges for the supply of waste management services, including the storage, collection and removal of general waste on all land and structures to which a waste management service is supplied, or in the case of rateable land which is occupied, made available by Council as follows, as presented, items 1 and 2 with the table included, shown on pages 74, 75, 76. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Henson. Any speakers? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? We'll take as Councillor Erkins against because you didn't raise your hand. You did. So those are you in favour, Councillor, or against? You're in favour. Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay. We'll go through to page 91 where we have the setting. 7.19, setting of wastewater utility charges for 22-23. Okay, so the recommendation is that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 99 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council may can levy sewerage utility charges for the supply of sewerage services by the Council as follows, and that is as presented at the top of page 92. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, seconder. Councillor Potter. Councillor Erkins.
Sorry, I just have a question on that last one. I might be out of order, but you've got the charges in there that we just voted on for the waste, for the recycling. So will those charges automatically be changed to what we voted on with the pensioners? Okay,
Yes, that's correct.
That was my confusion.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to clarify, that will be updated. Thank you. Okay, speakers in relation to 7.19, wastewater utility charges. Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This was actually a very difficult piece of work. I know we had started the conversation last year's budget and it's still an ongoing conversation. I just wanted to confirm the discussion that we've had. So the 3% increase on sewerage is largely to account for those large capital spends required into the future. And the work that we've done around trying to understand how we spread the costs of the network across those that are potentially using it, have a higher usage of the network. So I feel from the work that we've done, this is a start. I'm nervous about supporting this because I know it will have an impact on our local schools, and I know we have communicated with them and tried to share this information ahead of time so that it could be incorporated into their budget planning themselves. I do feel that hospitals absolutely need to be contributing a reasonable amount to our network. The reality is the construction of a new hospital in our region is a wonderful outcome, but they do rely heavily on our wastewater network, and so they do need to cover. They do need to contribute appropriately to the costs of that network. I don't think it's fair for our ratepayers to make up that shortfall and pay more on their rising sewage network charges when we've got larger users not contributing in a way in which they should. So I am supportive of this motion. I am hesitant in ways because I know it will have an impact on those with hotels and motels and caravans and other commercial arrangements. But I do feel that they have had time to prepare. I also recognise that we've seen unprecedented numbers of tourists and visitors and unprecedented numbers of vacancy rates in our region, and I just wanted the chamber to know that this has not been an easy decision for me. I know that this will have an impact locally, and I'm willing to support it because I know into the future we have a significant wastewater network that needs maintenance and renewal, and the reality is that at the moment we're relying on the wastewater charges that we collect to subsidise the extensive spend we need to put into water infrastructure. And while we have applied for building our region's grants and to support us with that feat, the reality is it's an enormous task ahead of our region to meet the needs of our water infrastructure. So I will support this because I feel it's the right thing to do by this council, but morally I do have concerns. It does weigh heavy on my heart, and I will make this decision for the benefit of our future wastewater needs of our region.
Further speakers? To the vote? Oh, sorry, Councillor Hanching.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, fully understand, Councillor Shoemaker. This has been a conversation that we've had in this chambers, and the Mayor's brought it forward some 12 or 18 months ago. Certainly not an easy decision to make, but I'd like to think in this chamber and with my colleagues here, this is something that needs to be reviewed. We can review it certainly later down the track, but we will see where we go with this. And yes, there's a bit of work been done in this space over a long period of time, and there are some serious implications here. Yeah, it's a little bit of user pays, and that will be passed on, but we have a network that has to be maintained, and we'll see where this policy goes. But like Councillor Shoemaker, yeah, difficult decision, but we've thrashed this around in here for over 12 months, and this is where we're at this point in time. So I'd like to think that my colleagues would keep their eye on this and where we go with this in 6 or 12 months' time. Thank you.
Okay, any further speakers? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Sorry, thank you. Yes, Proston Common Effluent Disposal Utility Charges at 2223, page 93. So that's item 7.20. And it is recommended there in relation to the Proston Common Effluent disposal systems that pursuant to Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and Section 99 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council make and levy sewerage utility charges for the supply of sewerage services by the Council as follows. Take those as presented again at page 94. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.2, Water Supply Access Charge Methodology 22-23 at 95. Okay, so it's recommended that pursuant to section 92(4) of the Local Government Act 2009 and section 99 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, council make and levy water utility charges based on the following methodology to determine water access charges to be levied for the financial year and ending the 30th of June 2022 as follows. That includes items 1, 2, 3, as presented on pages 95 and 96. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.22, Water Supply Consumption Charge Methodology 22-23 at 97. Again, pursuant to section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and section 99 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, and on the basis of the principles laid down in Council's revenue statement, Council make and levy water utility consumption charges for the supply of water services as followed, and the following methodology be adopted to determine water consumption charges for water consumed each 6 months during the financial year ending the 30th of June 2023, items 1 and 2 as presented on pages 97 and 98. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconded Councillor Duff. Speakers? To the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.23, Water Supply Charges, 22-23 at 99. Recommendation pursuant to section 94 of the Local Government Act 2009 and section 99 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council make and levy water utility charges set out in the table hereunder for the provision of water supply services, access charges for the financial year ended 30 June 2023, as presented, items 1 on page 99, 2 on pages 100 and 101. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, seconder. Councillor Potter. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
This is certainly another one of these challenges for our region when we've got ageing water infrastructure that requires significant investment in the future years. You know, this has been a really, I know we've gone over this quite extensively and we've compared with other regions to try to find the best option for our council. It's not an easy decision to make, but the reality is that we do need to be recovering the cost of providing the infrastructure, and we have got a giant program ahead of us. I know the $1.5 million contribution towards the Mount Warulin Reservoir was the difference between having to consider an increase of up to 7% on our water charges in the future years or not. And I guess that why I'm willing to support this is because I would rather see us try to smooth out that charge over a period of time than whack our ratepayers in 1 year. 6% over the next 10 years, as we had modelled through some of these workshops, is a 60% increase, which is enormous. And I do think we need to continue to find every single opportunity to find funding and to help alleviate the burden of renewing ageing water infrastructure on our region and our ratepayers. I know that comes at a cost, and I know that 6% increase will be difficult for some households, but I'm willing to support this because I know how important that infrastructure is into the future, and I know it's important we have money in the bank, because if something breaks down or there is a need for emergent works, which we have seen in this term of council, we need to be able to push the button, write the cheque and get the work done. So I'm willing to support this. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Further speakers? To the vote, those in favour? Carried unanimously, thank you all. 7.24, levy and payment of rates and charges 22-23 at 102. Recommendation is that pursuant to Section 107 of the Local Government Regulation 2012 and Section 114 of the Fire and Emergency Services Act 1990, council rates and charges and the State Government's emergency management, fire and rescue levy be levied A, for the half of the year 1 July 2022 to 31 December 2022 in August 2022, and B, for the half year 1 January 23 to 30 June 23 in February 2023. 2, pursuant to Section 118 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the Council's rates and charges and the State Government's Emergency Management Fire and Rescue Levy be paid within 30 days of the issue of the rates notice. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers, Councillor Shoemaker? No? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.25, adoption of discount on rates, 22-23 at 104. Recommendation is that pursuant to Section 130 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the differential general rates, wastewater utility charges, water access charges, refuse collection charges, recycling collection charges made and levy shall be subject to an early payment discount of 10% if paid within the discount period of 30 days of the date of issue of the rate notice, provided that 1, all of the aforementioned rates and charges are paid within 30 days of the date of issue of the rate notice. 2, all other rates and charges appearing on the rate notice that are not subject to discount are paid within 30 days of the date of issue of the rate notice. And 3, all other overdue rates and charges relating to the rateable assessment are paid within 30 days of the date of issue of the rate notice. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, second. Councillor Shoemaker. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
I just wanted to point out certainly that the discount is an important component in terms of council receiving the income that it needs to continue its operations in that 30-day window. But it's been interesting to see many other councils consider reducing that or taking it away. And I think it's testament to the work that we've done that we've been able to maintain it this year and maintain a minimal rate increase. It's quite extraordinary, really. I'm still not sure if that's the right decision, to be honest. But I do see the 10% discount. I'd be afraid if we did play with that it's seen to be double dipping. And I think some regions have just done that, and it's pretty amazing that this council, despite its challenges, is able to maintain that 10% discount. So I'm fully supportive of this motion.
Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, that's right. And when we see neighbouring councils or other councils where they've taken it back or they've actually disbanded this, it's actually a rate increase. So congratulations to the people, and we thank the people. This equates to roughly $2 million plus to our council revenue with early payments. And that's credit to our ratepayers to be able to do that. Fully understand there's many that can't, as Councillor Erkins alluded to, but it's an option there, and if we were to take that away or we review that, it would be seen as a rate grab, and that can be a substantial amount of money. So it's credit to this council to still be able to implement that 10% discount on early payment under the circumstances and with the budget that we've just brought in and the figures that have been there. So if we didn't have that, imagine how it would look then. But I'm fully supportive of this and congratulate and thank the ratepayers to be able to do that. Thank you.
Further speakers? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Just note that Councillor Potter. So, okay. 6-0, sorry. Okay. Interest on overdue rates, 7.26, 105. Officer's recommendation is that pursuant to Section 133 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, compound interest on daily rests at the rate of 8.17% per annum, be charged on all overdue rates or charges. South Burnett Regional Council determined that rates or charges will be considered as overdue for the charging of interest if they remain unpaid after 30 days from the due date of the relevant rate notice. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we'd certainly challenge this percentage, but it is relevant and correct in the current environment. And I guess I just wanted to highlight for our ratepayers, Council's hardship policy and the compassion that our team and often our council shows to people who are suffering financial hardship. By all means, please do not let your rates become so overdue that paying them is an impossible feat. Please come and talk to us early. Please contact us. Please do what you can to manage the costs of rates responsibly in your household budget. We recognise it is a challenge for many families across the region, many residents in our region, but we would hate to see interest charged when another arrangement could be made. So please reach out, make a payment plan early. Don't leave things to mount up to the point where we're charging interest to you that is compounding and making that debt even more and more hard to pay back.
Further speakers? To the vote, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.27, adoption of the setting of concession on rates and charges for approved pensioners, 2022-23 at 106. It's recommended that pursuant to sections 120, 121 and 122 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, a rebate of rates be granted to all ratepayers who are pensioners and who are eligible for the Queensland Government Pensioner Remission. The rebate will be set at 20% of the differential general rate, sewerage utility charges, water utility charges and waste refuge utility charges, and the maximum concession granted per property shall be capped at $200 per annum. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Potter. Speakers? Councillor Potter.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to ask a question. Earlier today, we had the policy that we moved, and we had government concessions, but you also had Veterans Affairs in there. Is that included in this group, or is it not?
Thank you, Councillor. General Manager, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it is, Councillor.
Mr. CEO, thank you.
Mayor, I've got a clarification, which I don't know if I'm being overly pedantic, but the recycle bin concession would be above the $200 cap. Am I correct in that interpretation?
Yes, I would think so. Yes.
So we will approach this resolution. It's the $200 plus the resolution we passed earlier.
That would be my understanding, but happy to take clarification. General Manager O'May.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Bree, I've sent you an email with the extra dot point to put in for this one.
Thank you, General Manager. We'll just pick that up. Oh, there it is. Yes. Sorry, recyclable waste. So as presented there, points 1, 2 and 3, Councillors Duff and Potter, comfortable for that to be included?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we now have the motion as presented there. Speakers? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. CEO and General Manager. 7.28. Adoption of exemptions and concessions on various special, separate and utility charges for 22-23. That's at 107. Sorry, Mr. CEO.
Yeah, no worries. My apologies for interrupting, Mayor. There's a transcription error. So this is one that it's correct in the budget document itself, but it's incorrect here, and I do apologise profusely for it. In the kindergarten line before council moves, it has 100% water access 0 and sewerage access 0. In the budget documents in the previous discussion, it was 100%, 50%, and 50%. So I do sincerely apologise, but it was a transcription error and I didn't pick it up when we ran the agenda.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. CEO. Do we need to say that per the amended table, or can we just leave it as is on screen? Yeah, as adopted. Yep. Okay, that's fine. So, Councillor Potter, you got your light on? Is that just a?
Yeah, no, I
With-
do want to talk.
We're with you. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, already. Look, I just want to say this is one of the good things that, you know, people complain we don't do enough for our community, but this just shows you, and this is worth over 250,000. I don't know the correct amount, but it's over 250 and should be getting up to nearly 300,000, I'm thinking. But anyway, this is one of the things that we do for all of our community groups. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're in that list, we help them and we help them save money throughout the year. And I just want this is the good news stuff that Councillor Duff always talks about. And this is some of the things that we should be getting out there and should be putting through our media, because this really does help all of these community groups at the grassroots.
Thank you, Councillor. So in light of that, the recommendation is as presented on page 108. Bree, if we could just bring that up on the screen, next page down, page 108. There is the recommendation there. So as presented, Mr. CEO? Yes, 728. Yep. Sorry, 728. My apologies. Yeah. As presented, my apologies, on pages, yes, yep, page 108. Yep, 728 on page 108. As presented, do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Potter. Further speakers? To the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, 7.29, adoption of the concession of water consumption charges, hemodialysis machines 2223 at 109, where it's recommended that pursuant to sections 120, 121 and 122 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council allows an annual rebate of 190 kilolitres on the water usage to any patient who qualifies for and operates a home hemodialysis machine supplied by Queensland Health at a current estimated reduction in revenue of $362.90. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers, go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 7.30, adoption of waiving minimal general rates 2223 at 110, whereby it is recommended that pursuant to sections 120, 121 and 122 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, Council grants a rebate equal to the full value of the separate charges and part of the differential general rates equal to the difference between the minimum differential general rate for the appropriate category and the rate calculated using the rate in the dollar and the valuation for the properties identified hereunder. 1. Any rateable land held as a permit to occupy for water facility purposes, namely bore and pump site and associated purposes only. And 2, properties that are small parcels of land worked in conjunction with properties held in the same ownership and identified in table hereunder. 2 properties there, 31384 Hebble Drive, Tablelands, 31598-1 Bradley's Road, Warroondin. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, seconded Councillor Henson. Speakers, to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Final item on the agenda today is 8.1, question on notice in relation to Proston Calf sculptures, and that is at page 112, where the question related to the community request for works to be completed pre-2023. Would it be possible to have the attached project plan for Mrs Ray assessed as to an estimated cost for discussion at the upcoming budget meeting on 8 July? And the response is as provided. That was a question that I posed, and does anyone have any further questions in relation to the response? Thank you, Mr CEO.
Just a procedural matter, because it's a petition. It will also be presented to the July ordinary for formal receipt, and then it will be a report and brought back. So there will be, if you think it's a double up and over, the petition will be receipted formally at the July ordinary, or received or formally.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. CEO. I'll now move that be accepted. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Potter, thank you. Speakers, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just grateful to get the response. Just a question for GM O'May. So from reading this, it says that we had actually put the W4Q money toward doing the railway park in Proston, which included the installation of the Wiener sculptures, which I thought was the case. But then after we spoke to the roundtable, they prioritised the installation of the playground equipment instead. So the project was put on hold. But in reading this, it says that it is feasible that the playground equipment installation will not fully utilise the entire allocation, and it will be possible to undertake the initial installation with further embellishments program in the future, subject to funding. I just wanted to understand, was there, because from here I thought I read it sounded like we may not use all the funding, or the project's not quite complete, and there may be an opportunity to slip this into our first quarter budget review.
Thank you, General Manager.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so the we are undertaking the installation of the playground equipment. Essentially, now the guys are working on that, so we do hope to complete that over the coming weeks, so that it would be actually, we could have a look at the first quarter. If we can say we've only spent 40,000 of the 50,000 allocation, then it could be possible to do component of the, whether it's just to get the wieners in, but not have the the trough and windmill. It is a project that we can add to. One of the complications around this one is the Christmas tree, and relocation, like where the wieners are going is where the Christmas tree. So yeah, it is one we'd like to just basically get the playground equipment in, and get a final costing on that, and bring it back to council if there's an allocation, and just sort of cost up what we can do as a first stage of this, and then add bits later on. So that was basically the context of, we'd like to get the playground in, see what that's finished up, and then look at what we can do.
Thank you, General Manager. Further questions? Councillor Duff.
I just want to follow up on that one, because I was involved in the negotiation, because there was a choice of whether they could do the wieners or not have, it's an actual train for the children to play on in that space underneath the shade shelter. So there was a shortfall. That was that money I was trying to get through the Works for Queensland, was that $30,000 difference to do the train and the wieners. So they had to go one or the other because they couldn't do both. So they went for the train for the young children rather than doing the wieners. But they wanted to try and get those wieners done before the 100-year centenary. So that was the shortfall. Thank you.
Okay, further speakers? All right, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carry unanimously. Thank you all. Well, that now concludes our special budget meeting for 2022-23. I'll now call the meeting to a close, and in doing so, thank you all for your attendance and engagement today, including councillors, staff, members of the press, and also community members. We look forward to hopefully what will be a good year for our region. Thank you all.